Delegates, can I call Congress to order, please? Morning, delegates. Hope you all had a good evening last night. Look, we're nearly there. We're nearly there. Great to see a sea of red in front of me. First item on the agenda is a Standing Orders Committee report number 5.
Only a short one, this one. President, Congress, Helen Johnson, Midland and East Coast Region, moving SOC report number 5. Firstly, withdrawn motions. We'd just like to confirm that the following 2 motions were withdrawn from the rostrum yesterday. Motion 114, representation on the National Equality Forum, and Motion 117, support for young member structures. Both motions were standing in the name of London Region. And bucket collections. Yesterday's bucket collection by GMB Scotland for Guide Dogs for the Blind raised a whopping total of £678.
Well done. Any contributions? Am I looking? Sorry? Oh, thank you. Northwestern Irish. Bidding fronted. You'll have to be louder. Thank you. Any more for any more?
Midland.
Thank you. Wales and South West, thank you. Birmingham, thank you. London, thank you. Paul, Southern, thank you. Up the back? Yeah, thank you. Brilliant. Excellent. Excellent. I've just got...
What did you say to Yorkshire 10 grand?
There's somebody just wants to come and speak on guide dogs. Do you want to do your report first and we'll let them come up afterwards? Yeah? Okay, finish your report and then we'll do that.
President, Congress, I move SOC report number 5.
Anyone want to come and speak on it? No? Okay, can I put that to the vote? Standing Orders Committee report number 5. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Thank you. Mary, would just like to talk a little bit. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Just to say something about the charity.
Thank you very much. And it's Mary Finn, GMB Scotland, first time speaker. It is a big thank you for the donations for Dogs for the Blind. And this is, we already have 2, but what I really want is for every region to have a dog. Now, I've had a pledge from Clyde Bonding that if I match 5,000, they will double it and give me 10,000. So, thank you, Clyde Bonding.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. Before we move on to the first set of motions, but if speakers for motion 93 and 96 could come to the front. Tim would just like to have a few words on behalf of the Southern Region, I believe. Yeah? Yeah.
Good morning, Congress. I hope you're all well after a quiet night last night. I saw most of you during that time. I'm told I had a very good time as well. Someone said to me on the way in, your eyes look terrible. I said, you want to see them from this side? Whilst we've been sat here this week, a situation has unfolded that I think you need to know about, and that is at Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club. Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club have sacked a number of their workers, sacked them by telephone, no process, no representation, no GMB presence allowed on site to represent these people. Conference, I'm not sure they were listening to my speech yesterday. We're a fighting trade union. We will never stand by and allow our members to be treated in this way. Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club, treat your workers with respect. If you want to be in the Premier League, then you should provide Premier League representation for your staff. So, on behalf of you all, I will leave them with this thought. Either treat those workers with dignity and respect and allow them the representation they deserve, otherwise we'll be contacting American Express, their sponsor, and I'll be asking and demanding that they walk away from that football club. Conference, please support those workers at Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That was an important message that Tim needed to say this morning to get it out there to know that the football club are listening to us. We're on track. We're doing well. Can I just again ask people to be disciplined about their speaking times? You've been really good so far, and hopefully we'll get through this business again today on time, or not on time, but get through the whole business in one day. Can I have the move of motion 93, please?
President, Congress, Paul Maguire, Wales and South West Region, moving motion 93, fully flexible shop steward training. Congress, the GMB's core purpose is that every member should have the opportunity to discover and develop their talents. That is why having workplace organisers and members accessing lifelong learning is part of their membership benefits. Colleagues, GMB at Work is the key driving force for the union. Any plan that seeks to address the issue of underrepresentation of women must be relevant to GMB at Work. This indeed must come intrinsic to it and be part of the everyday life of the union. In 2017, Congress in Plymouth, our 100th Congress anniversary, a special report was adopted on GMB reps training, in which included facilities to deliver a series of webinar-based training and to establish additional e-learning opportunities available for workplace organisers. We are pleased with these developments, which have been implemented, however, feel that there is still room for continuous improvement to have courses on offer to our reps who find it difficult to attend training Monday to Friday, where childcare, disabilities and part-time working become a massive hurdle when trying to schedule and take part in essential training courses. Congress, we recognise that as an organisation, the GMB actively promote flexibility within the workplace to accommodate childcare, disabilities and part-time working. We should also recognise the need for the same flexibility towards training our workplace organisers, which will encourage recruitment, development and equal opportunities. Colleagues, we commend the GMB for the development of training and the strategies put in place to challenge an ever-changing world to provide the best possible training and development for our reps. We are continuously adapting to new challenges, but need also to look at ways to train our reps who struggle to attend courses and self-develop themselves, as some other workplace organisers are able to. Let's support this motion and improve our delivery of training to reach every single representative in an equal way. I move. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Seconder.
President, Congress, Sharon Jenkins, Wales and South West Region, seconding motion 93. First time delegate, first time speaker. Congress, this motion sets out the request to look at a more flexible approach to training when scheduling and planning training courses. We recognise there is some variation across regions as to the types of courses that are available to reps, although all regions offer initial support and training at a standardised GMB at Work course for all new reps. At present, the majority of our training courses can exclude some new reps, as they are often held during term time only in local GMB sub-offices on weekdays and during the hours of 9 AM and 5 PM, in some previous cases spread over 10 to 12 weeks. A proportion of reps do not make it to their training because of certain obstacles such as childcare and disability issues. Colleagues, we need to take into consideration the needs of our reps and look at a more flexible opportunity for our reps to be able to attend courses and develop their skills equal to all. Congress, the Equality Special Strategy Report, we recognise that training and resources are central to ensuring our GMB reps and activists have the skills needed to represent members on equality issues, but also to bargain, recruit and negotiate on members' central issues and needs. Colleagues, we need to seek and increase the number of workplace reps from all backgrounds by looking at how we deliver training for members in unorganised workplaces. Not all members have release to attend weekday training courses, and many have caring responsibilities. This is more likely to be the case for women, BAME workers, young and disabled members. We believe that each region should be able to provide all the self-training courses that can be delivered nationally and in regions as needed. This will develop and empower all activists and reps, regardless of any issues they have attending training and undertaking their day-to-day role as required. Please support, I second.
Perfect, Sharon. Well done. Thank you. Mover of motion 96.
Good morning, President, Congress. Leanne Chapman, South Wales and West South region. First-time delegate, first-time speaker. Thank you. Congress, the GMB represents all workers. We stand against bullying and hatred. That must be and is our core values, and we will continue to do so in the defence of our trans workers. We recognise that many employers do not adequately understand trans issues, nor do many working in the services that trans people rely upon. Colleagues, we must all recognise that to deal with these issues, we must have representatives in place who are skilled, fully trained to support, service and assist our trans members within their workplaces. This Congress recognises that no gender identity journey is the same. GMB understands that intersectionally means members may face different challenges and have different needs based on BAME status or faith. Colleagues, in the trans special statement endorsed last year at Congress, it is stated that the GMB understands that different cultural, faith and gender issues in different communities require more than a one-size-fits-all approach to inclusivity. And we welcome that the GMB will work nationally and regionally to provide training, advice and guidance that builds our trans workers' toolkit in conjunction with specialists such as the Stonewall. Colleagues, we must support our trans workers, their branches and reps, implement training and identify the needs of our trans members. The Trans Workers Toolkit will be a fantastic asset and guide our reps and trans members moving forward. We recognise the Equality Act 2010 places duty on the public employers to take positive steps to eliminate discrimination, foster good working relationships and provide equality for all trans people. Our GMB reps should have adequate training and update in relation to the Equality Act and ensure that the confidence to undertake equality impact assessments in relation to transgender needs and be able to embed equality objectives on behalf of our GMB members. Please support, I move.
Well done, Leanne. Seconder? Well, the seconder's coming up. Can I ask movers and seconders of motion 374, 376, 377, 379, 380 and 381 to make your way to the front, please?
President, Congress. Wendy Cole, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. Wales and South West region, second in motion 96, transgender training for GMB reps. Congress. All trade unions need to be willing and able to assist trans members to get equal and non-discriminatory treatment at work. Many trans people face harassment and discrimination throughout their daily lives while walking in public places, while being customers and service users, and crucially in employment. Colleagues, as a result of campaigning, legislation is being strengthened to give our trans members more protection. The reason I am so passionate about this motion is because of what happened to our transgender member, Emma, who was very happy for me to share her story with you all. Emma knew from the age of 8 that she was in the wrong body, but as Andrew, she did what society expected. She got married and had children. Emma trusted her managers and agreed a process and plan through her transition. However, they pulled the rug from under her and put her on ill health capability. They didn't stop there. They actually sacked her. We supported Emma through this, and with the help of our regional organiser, Gareth, we got her reinstated. We came to realise that there was a lack of support in Wales for Emma and for us as workplace organisers to be able to support her. There is also a lack of training for managers, together with a real lack of understanding. Colleagues, making an organisation trans-inclusive is imperative. We need to ensure our activists and workplace organisers are trans-inclusive trained to support our members. Congress, let's all be trans-inclusive. Let's upskill ourselves to represent our trans members to the best of our ability across the UK. I second, please support.
Well done, Wendy. Well done. Does anyone want to come and speak against any of those motions? In that case, there is no CEC speaker because the CEC are supporting both motions, so I'll take them as a block. All those in favour of motions 93 and 96, please show. Anyone against? They're both carried. Thank you. We now move on to social policy, education and training, so could mover of 374 please come.
President, Congress, Alan Law, London Region, moving motion 374, school uniforms. If you browse any school or academy website, you will see the uniform is compulsory. All students are required to wear full uniform with correct identification for their attending school. It is expected that all students will wear the appropriate uniform unless a valid medical or cultural reason is given. Some students may have to wear extra head coverage for religious reasons. For instance, students may risk from being withdrawn from school if the school uniforms are not worn. There are a huge number of parents are unable to afford to have the purchase of a school uniform from a particular shop. The school name and logo is embroidered on each item at an extra cost. As we have seen in the media, many families are living below the breadline. This means that this government is not worried about that. We all know school budgets are cut year after year. Gaining profits from uniform sales helps schools make ends meet. Some schools and academies are now realising the hardships some families can suffer, simply because they have to provide a certain uniform for their children. Some schools are now allowing uniforms to be purchased from other places, for instance, superstores, supermarkets. There would therefore be no embroidered school logo. Surely schools could just have a sweatshirt embroidered as a compulsory item. This would clearly show the school's name and logo, much needed on school trips, etc. We, the GMB, should push this forward so that the government makes it possible for uniforms to be purchased from superstores and other outlets. These are much cheaper than school shops. School shops can charge up to twice the price of a standard uniform. This change would help families to manage their budgets once more. Parents with more than one child are under enormous pressure and financial pressure from the schools to provide uniforms. I move.
Thank you, Alan. Well done. Seconder?
Good morning. Lorna Gale, Aviation Security, London Region. Seconding motion 374, school uniform. President, Congress. We all know that school uniforms can be very costly, especially if you can't afford it in the first place. The price of school uniform has risen. The average school uniform costs £340 per year per secondary school aged child, up 7% from 2015. There has also been a 2% rise in the cost of school uniform for children at primary school. In many cases, we have children of a bigger size. This means they would have to buy adult size at an even higher cost. The price includes a 20% VAT, which make it excessively high and almost unaffordable for many. Where there are more than one child attending uniform-based school, there should be a concessionary reduction in the cost or a cheaper outlet. Pressure should not be put on the unemployed and low-income families to pay these highly inflated prices. Let us call on the government to look at alternative ways that school uniform can be bought at a more realistic and affordable price for every family in this country regardless. I second this motion. Please support.
Thank you, Lorna. Mover of motion 376.
Morning. Richard Morgan, Midlands and East Coast Region, moving motion 376. The government needs to hear this for deaf children. President, Congress. More than a third of councils in England are cutting educational support by a total of £4 million for deaf children, according to figures obtained by the National Deaf Children's Society. Figures gained through the Freedom of Information request show that the councils in these areas are cutting 10% on average from deaf children's services, which are already near breaking point. In the last 4 years, 1 in 10 specialist teachers of deaf have been cut. Meanwhile, deaf children are falling behind at every stage in the school. And at GCSE, 2/3 of deaf children fail to achieve grade 5 in both English and maths. This is a key government target which they're setting them up to fail at. The cuts come as councils across England struggle to meet the growing demand for support for children with special needs. Deaf children can achieve anything and everything other children can, but to do this, it is crucial they get the right support. Despite councils having a legal duty to support deaf children, we're seeing the vital support systems they rely on for their education being torn apart. There must be additional and ongoing funding from government to enable councils to support high-needs children and their families. Otherwise, councils may not be able to meet the statutory duties of the children and they could miss out in mainstream education. I'm confident that Congress will share my region's concern that a generation of deaf children are being further disadvantaged by the government's heartless policy of austerity cuts for those who are most in need of educational support. The government needs to hear this for deaf children. This Congress calls upon the GMB to lobby MPs and government to reduce the sharp decline in training for fully trained teachers for our deaf children and to increase support for funding the support staff, which are mainly our members. Congress, these children are our future. This Tory government of privilege and entitlement are unable to govern. They must get out of the way and let Labour govern for them. They've shown themselves to be totally incompetent and unable to do the job. Now, if the Labour Party adopt our GMB policies to move forward, they'll make it at a stroll. So now, time to stand up to the plate and move on. Congress, I move.
Well done, Richard. Thank you. Seconder.
Steve Alexander, Midland and East Coast Region, second in motion. This government needs to hear this for deaf children. President, Congress, deaf children have the same potential as any other child, but the lack of crucial support in the form of trained deaf tutors is severely undermining the chances of achieving. Austerity cuts have led to budget reductions, lack of funding for training and a failure to recruit, which has resulted in a 14% reduction of qualified teachers of the deaf. A quarter of local authorities only have one specialist deaf tutor per 80 students, and 15% have only have one per 100. Whilst every local authority is different, the sheer volume of children needing support means corners are being cut. But this is going to get worse. 45,000 deaf children are approaching a literal cliff edge in the terms of their education, as 57% of the existing specialist staff are due to retire in the next 10 to 15 years. This lack of investment not only has to stop, but must be reversed and quickly if we are to avoid these children being discriminated against. Deaf children risk having their futures decimated, as the system for supporting them in education is in complete disarray. Congress, I ask you, support this motion. I second.
Steve, thank you. Brilliant. I wish I knew more signing, I really do. Mover of motion 377.
Kath Pinder, Yorkshire and North Derbyshire Regional President, moving motion 377, Arts and Culture. In truth, what I'm here to talk about is central to all we do, equality and fairness. We all know that after almost a decade of Tory austerity, the playing field is not level. Access to arts and culture, which is about much more than trips to art galleries, museums and theatres, is crucial for our education, health and well-being. But the creative industries and all the opportunities that come with it are dominated by those from more privileged backgrounds, those who can afford to pay for private tuition for their kids or send them to expensive schools. The rest of us, faced with a curriculum decimated by a decade of cuts to our schools, don't get a look in. The fact that children from lower-income families are half as likely to learn a musical instrument than their wealthy peers speaks for itself. It's a vicious circle that must be broken. And why is it important? Because we need to fight for our children to be equipped with the skills they need to flourish, giving them access to subjects that should be a right, not a privilege. The arts gives people the confidence to express themselves and flourish when otherwise some may struggle in an academic setting, learning key life skills and work skills such as public speaking, interacting with others and developing ideas. I can bear witness to what can be achieved when young people have a level playing field. BO5 has many young members who make a significant contribution to our union. Emily Warrilow, who has campaigned to get a dangerous building demolished and delivered political awareness in schools. Gina Harding, who has campaigned with me day in, day out for the Labour Party and is a branch comms officer. Joshua Smith, who is on our REC, and Javad Khan, who achieved at 21 the incredible position of number 3 on the slate for the Yorkshire and Humber Labour Party European elections. All of them are at Congress as either delegates or visitors, and our region is rightly proud of what they continue to achieve with the support of the branch, region and national. All of our youth should have the right to experiences which enhance their life. The economy is changing and cultural activities are becoming increasingly important. If we're to tap into that and the social and economic regeneration that comes with it, we need to make sure we're equipped so the benefits flow out of London and into our communities. It's about future-proofing. The world of work is changing. The automation of the workforce, artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution will transform our relationship with work. We need to be ready. We need well-rounded generation who've been taught to explore and create. Young people with resilience who can adapt to the challenges we'll face in the years to come. So how do we as trade unionists take on this battle? In short, we campaign and fight for equal access to cultural education, for everyone to have the same opportunities, regardless of background or parents' income. We continue to fight against the cuts that are devastating our schools, against the abuses of labour that are rampant in our gig economy, and for a national living wage that lifts people out of poverty. And we explore new ways of working with creative industries and give the arts the weight they deserve. In these uncertain political times, it's more important than ever to fight for equality of opportunity in all aspects of life, and the reward will be well-rounded individuals working with and enjoying their communities, confident people willing to expand their horizons and advocate for those who seek to exploit. Ultimately, it's about doing what we've always done at the GMB and what we do so well, taking on the vested interests and fighting to make sure no one is left behind. Congress, I move.
Well done, Kath. Well said. Thank you. Seconder.
Good morning, Congress President. Glynwydale, Kirklees Local Authority Branch, Yorkshire and North Derbyshire Region, supporting motion 377. I am privileged to live in an area in Yorkshire with a world-renowned proud history of brass and choral music. I had free lessons at school, free music lessons at school as a child. Children must now pay a minimum of £62 per term to access this service. This completely disenfranchises many children from vulnerable backgrounds and low-paid families. Access to music and the arts through our country's heritage should be free and available to all. I know Kath has already talked in detail about just how damaging cuts to our school have been in terms of arts and culture subjects. Austerity once again robbing our children of the start in life they deserve. But it's not just our schools that are feeling the pinch in terms of arts and culture. I'll pick up just one area in particular that is bearing the brunt, our local authorities. As you well know, our local authorities have been cut to the bone over the past 9 years. By 2020, they will have been cut by the staggering sum of nearly £16 billion. Some councils are struggling to fund even basic statutory services, so it was inevitable that funding on what some might see as superfluous activities suffered. As Kath has already articulated, spending on arts and culture is far from superfluous, but impossible decisions have to be made and millions miss out as a result. Funding for our musicians, art galleries, cultural centres and libraries has to come from somewhere. More often than not, it's a cash-strapped local authority. The Arts Council make up some of the shortfall, but not nearly enough, and the spend tends to disproportionately benefit London and other big cities. So whilst our local authorities are struggling to make ends meet, we're not going to see the investment in arts and the culture that we need. The type of investment that brings not only vital access to these cultural activities, but benefits the economy and provides jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Well done. Mover of motion 379.
Nathan Clark, London Region, moving motion 379 on skills for life for young people. President, Congress. Clearly, I myself am someone who can be considered at least somewhat close to what a young person is. In actuality, it will be a decade this year since I left high school, and truth be told, I don't remember it that fondly. But I do remember a little mandatory module that was chucked in during my AS levels, something called General Studies, which was meant to be about life skills. Every week, my peers and I would attend this hour lesson, where within 5 minutes we'd discover half the class hadn't bothered to turn up, and for those that had, the teacher would chuck on whatever VHS they had lying around to keep us entertained for the next 55 minutes. Occasionally, we were given leaflets that explained why voting was important or the political issues of the time, but those were quickly lost in the smorgasbord of paperwork that a student receives day in, day out. As you can probably guess, the lessons were taken seriously by neither student, nor teacher, nor school. I emerged into society green as grass and not at all wise in the ways of the world or how to conduct myself as an adult. Much like Game of Thrones' Jon Snow, I knew nothing. I took up my first job at 20 years old, and somehow, by either sheer miracle or will of the gods, I managed to maintain 8 years of continuous employment and have had to muddle my way through all of the skills that the motion speaks of: my finances, my living accommodation, political voting, and I have made some serious mistakes along the way. I didn't even have a clue what a trade union was, and it wasn't until 4 years ago, when I got myself in a spot of bother at work, that I, desperate and turning for help at any corner, stumbled across GMB. I think we can all agree on one simple thing. Our education system needs looking at. It needs bolstering, and it needs investment, and it needs modernising for a 21st century world. This would be a great place to start, getting our next generation ready for adult life, giving them the tools and the knowledge to be ready for the world at large. I needed those skills, and even though my school ran it in the curriculum, it wasn't fit for purpose, it was never taken seriously, and at 17, it started too late to be useful. But there will be hundreds of other schools, perhaps thousands, across the country that do not even run this in the curriculum at all. And then for them, there is almost no chance of our next generation being taught these skills as part of their education. Congress, I thank you for listening, and I would ask you to support this motion. I move.
Thank you, Nathan. We're glad you found the GMB. Well done. Seconder.
Dan Durkin, London Region, first time delegate, first terrible hangover. President Congress, as you heard, this motion looks to improve life skills for young people. I'm sure many of us here, when we were about 17, 18 in our first job, were asked to work another 30 minutes or something like that. We weren't paid for that time. Maybe some of you said no, but most of us here would have tried to make a good impression and done it. But that's theft. And this motion is about teaching young people about their rights in the workplace, as well as a range of life skills. Young people are treated by employers as a soft target. It's easy to exploit young people in the workplace, get them to do that little bit more time at work, or get them to work a bit harder, bully them a bit. And if we don't include a good Skills for Life curriculum, it's going to continue. Much of the current Skills for Life provision is terrible. As Nathan mentioned, in the schools, it's not a good class. The teachers aren't invested. But on top of that, where it is reasonable, it tends to be private provision. So it tends to be voluntary sector organisations, or quite shockingly, corporate CSR. So if we don't push the government to give good skills for life, the people who are going to teach it, one of the big providers is Barclays. So they're not going to encourage young people to fight for their working rights and to stand up for themselves in the workplace and to stand up against bullying and to join trade unions. So we need to push the government to do this properly. We need a good skills for life. We need young people knowing about their workers' rights and about trade unions and all that type of thing. So please support this motion.
Well done, Dan. Thank you. Mover of motion 380.
President, Conference, Dan Preston, Yorkshire North Derbyshire Region. Moving motion 380, provision of pay slips. First time delegate, first time speaker. Congress, do you get a pay slip? Do you know how to tell if you're being paid correctly and if your deductions are right? Imagine you don't get a pay slip. Your employer could pay you anything and you wouldn't know it was wrong. Never mind if the tax code is incorrect, if pension contributions are being made, or if your gross hourly rate is below the minimum. Without a pay slip or understanding what's on it, an employer could tell you anything and you wouldn't know that there was a problem. Let's say you decide to challenge your employer. The only recourse to get a pay slip is to raise a grievance and make trouble for them. If you have this problem, then you are most likely working where complaining would end up with you losing your job. There are too many employees who disregard every piece of employment legislation that requires them to provide pay slips and to calculate their employees' pay accurately. And then we'll find ways to get rid of people that question the lack of pay slips. Stopping this despicable behaviour is done by creating a workforce that will be unwilling to work without getting a pay slip. If getting a pay slip is the expectation of every potential employee, then it becomes difficult to run a company without producing them. Creating this workforce starts in secondary education. It requires a change of emphasis in the national curriculum so that the rights to a pay slip, the tax code, how it calculates tax-free pay, and the importance of knowing your gross pay become statutory subjects. HMRC already produced teaching aids which would only need a small change to be suitable. By echoing these topics through the career service and adult education and through the union, then the expectation of the whole workforce can be changed. According to the Department of Education, there are 1 in 7 adults in England that are functionally illiterate. This problem is made possible by a lack of education. By helping everyone to expect a pay slip, this motion has the potential of helping 4.5 million people. I ask Congress to support this motion. I move.
Well done, Dan. Well done. Seconder.
President, Congress. Philip Hill, Yorkshire and North Derbyshire region, here to support and second motion 380, provision of wage slips. In this day and age of technology, more and more employers are moving away from providing paper pay slips to its employees. There is an expectation that all employees have access to emails and the internet and how to use these systems safely and securely. However, what is being lost is the importance and the relevance of the information that is placed on a payslip. It's not just about how much an employee is being paid, but that the information on a payslip contains. I refer to a national employee's insurance number, an employee payroll number, a place of work, and other personal information. In a time when data breaches are increasing and unscrupulous people are vying to gather personal information for illicit reasons, why should we support this process? I feel we should resist as much as possible for the safety and protection of our members. I feel that to counter this threat, we as a union need to be proactive in requesting the government and employees to recognise this potential threat. I request the government to consider taking positive action against employers who do not issue pay slips, as stipulated in the Payment of Wages Act 1991. For all employers to include training around pay slips as part of their induction for all new employees. I ask the GMB to look at educational opportunities to teach our future members on how to read and understand the information that's been provided on pay slips, to assist them in protecting themselves by ensuring that unscrupulous employees and members of society do not have the opportunity to take advantage of our members. I therefore second this motion and ask for the delegates present here today to also support this motion. Thank you.
Well done, Phil. Mover of motion 381.
Greetings, President, Chair, Congress, and our lovely visitors. Victoria Ugweme, Southern Region, moving the motion, Say No to Honour Violence. This Congress asks that the GMB lobbies for the issue of honour violence to be a mandatory part of the school curriculum. Congress moves that resources are made available to allow GMB members to have a better understanding of the impact and enact change in culture. Imagine a 17-year-old girl who is a part-time employer in your establishment, comes to you and says, "My parents are taking me abroad next week. They are calling it a family holiday. But I know they're taking me there to get me married." You listen to what she has to say about not wanting to get married, about how she wants to go to the university and become a teacher. You hear the disappointment in her voice and can see the fears in her eyes. But because you don't want to seem racist, you don't want to offend her or her culture or her religion, you just don't do anything. For the sake of political correctness, you just leave it. Nothing bad will happen, you tell yourself. A week later, you hear her story on the news about an honor killing of a 17-year-old girl who was taken abroad to be married but ran away. She was unlucky because she was caught and then ordered to be killed by her family. Should I have said something, done something, you think to yourself? The short answer is yes. You should have done something. This is what is known as the one-chance rule. Instances like this should remind you of the 3R rule. Record, react, and refer. It's worth taking a chance, but never approach the family or the perpetrators, but report to the police or the necessary safeguarding team. Because you might be the only voice of confidence she has. It is the duty of employers, teachers, or anyone in position of authority to safeguard those in their care. The police will do the necessary precautionary checks. Issues facing young BAME groups need to be taken seriously as those facing all young British people through the school national curriculum, as is sexting, rape, and consent. Honor-based violence, forced marriages, and female genital mutilation are all heinous acts carried out in the name of honor. This isn't someone else's problem. It's a human rights issue. I leave you with these last few words. Educate, empower, and eradicate. Congress, please, please support this motion. Thank you.
No, thank you, Victoria. Seconder.
Morning, President, Congress. My name's Audrey Wilson, Southern Region, seconding motion 381, say no to honour violence. I call on Congress to support the motion moved by my fellow sister, to lobby for the issue of honour violence to be made a mandatory part of the school curriculum. It is vital that we educate generations that the potential issues they may face. There needs to be a greater understanding that this isn't someone else's problem, it's a human rights issue. They need to be educated about forced marriages, protection orders, and existing organisations which work with victims of honour violence cases. A step in the right direction would to be added the issue of honour violence into safeguarding policies. Thank you, Congress. Please support.
Thank you, Audrey. Does anybody want to speak against any of those motions? Then again, the CEC are supporting all of them, so I can take them as one block. So everybody in favour of motion 374, 376, 377, 379, 380, 381, please show. Anyone against? They're all carried. Can I have the movers and seconders for motion 369, 370, 372 and 373, please? That's social policy, young people.
Morning, Congress. Got you ahead of you, so I caught you out there, didn't I? Morning, Congress. We all well? Congress, in 1974, I attended my first Apex conference. This movement shaped me and made me. It made me passionate about the needs of young workers and about all workers. And I'm proud to stand today with a bit of history in this movement, thanks to what the movement did for me. Two movements shaped me, the Young Christian Workers and this movement, the GMB and its forerunner, the Apex Union. As a dynamic, young at heart and vibrant worker, I want you to pass this motion. I don't want you to refer it. The reason I don't want you to refer it is because this should be policy. And as far as I know, the Youth Forum is not a policy-making body. Congress, 467,000 young people aged 16 to 24 are unemployed in this country. 11.2% of them are unemployed across the UK. 15% of these young people, that is 70,000 young people aged 16 to 24, have been unemployed for 12 months or more. This is not a good figure, and it excludes many, and that figure excludes those in full-time education. On homelessness, 1 in 5 young people in the UK have sofa surfed in the past year. That means they haven't had anywhere to stay overnight. And almost half of them has sofa surfed for more than a month. What a society when we've got young people having to move from house to house, often in unsafe situations, to actually find a place to put their head down. What a disgrace. What an indictment on our society. Many of the surveys have found that many under 25 in London have stayed in unsafe places and have nowhere to call home. 1 in 5 young people are illegally paid below the minimum wage. Poverty among young people is growing. Food bank workers have told me that increasingly they've seen more and more young people arriving at the door pleading for food because they're in poverty. This is not acceptable in the modern society, and neither should it be. Young mothers and young fathers having to choose between the cost of childcare because their wages are not meeting enough to actually cover the cost of childcare. So to go to work, they're having to choose childcare against food, rent and other essential items and sanitary items. This is not good enough. Is it acceptable? No, it isn't. But what about those in education? There is evidence of huge impact that student loans are having on young people in this country. We've burdened them with a noose around their necks. Do you know what the average rate of taxation when you include the repayments for their student loans will be as they start to earn? It will be an equivalent rate of 40%. 40% because they're repaying student loans. Is it acceptable? No, it's not acceptable. How dare we impoverish our future generation with debt in such an appalling way, so much so they have to choose between whether they can live properly and easily. This is a spiral of decay that we put our young people into, and now they try and divide us. It's between the young and the old. Well, we're not having it. We're not having it. It's one movement and we stand for all. That's why I want you to pass this motion. An economy that continues to serve the few and not the many is a false economy. Congress, I ask you to vote for this and to support our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Seconder. Is there a seconder or are you formally? Okay, thank you. Mover for motion 370.
Good morning, Congress. Victoria Marr, first-time delegate, third-time speaker. Congress, as a child who grew up in the 1980s and from a working-class background, I spent my whole childhood and teenage years in adventure playgrounds and youth clubs, funded by the local government, just so my mum could go out and work and keep a roof over our heads. Us being there meant that my mother had peace of mind that her children were safe and happy. I'm asking GMB to work with local youth institutions, using our affiliations with charities, churches, local authorities and our Friends of Labour Party to reinvest in our youth and provide safe havens for our children and our future. We need to educate our children and empower them with knowledge so as they grow and are able to strive for better. The aim is to bring the message to our children via platforms that will create a younger, diverse generation of activists, and for the message of the unions to bring about change in current circumstances, growing GMB membership and empowering our youth with education and guidance. We're aiming for a generation of well-informed, educated and confident children instead of this gang culture that is becoming more commonplace. Our children are easy prey for criminals, their activities and their motives. As a direct result of central government cuts, local services have been slashed to the core. That means that your child,
My child and our children are taking the brunt of austerity brought on by the Conservatives bailing out the wankers, bankers, and society's elite. We need you to help our children, our future, and our next generation of activists. Congress, I move motion 370.
Thank you, Victoria. Well done. Seconder. Could I have speakers also for motions 309 and 310 to come down, please, so they're ready for that?
Morning, Congress. Morning, President. Sonia Davis, Southern Region, supporting motion 370, GMB supporting the youth. Every day, we wake up and hear of some form of incident involving our youth. Yes, we recognise austerity is the cause. Our youth, the next generation, need support and need it now. We call upon GMB to support our youth, to encourage them to live the lifestyle we had as children growing up. This will help to inform, educate, and empower our youth to take them away from the gang culture. It is not solely austerity which is the cause, lack of positive role models, lack of aspiration for our youth, and our young working class people are being left to their own devices. GMB can help make a difference to these young people's lives. We, the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, need to take ownership and guide our youth to recognise their voices can also be heard. This will not only empower our children, but will also grow them to be great trade unionists and activists. Congress, please support this motion.
Well done, Sonia, thank you. Mover of 372.
Good morning. Beverly Morrison, Southern Region, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. Thank you. President, Congress. The Red Project is a community-based, non-profit organisation aims to support young girls during their menstrual cycle by providing red boxes filled with free menstrual products to schools across the country. The Red Box Project was founded in March 2017 after researching into period poverty. I learned young girls were missing out on their education because low-income families could not afford the products. The Red Box Project started in Portsmouth and is now a global organisation that provides sanitary towels, tampons, underwear and tights for young people. This year, I attended the GMB Women's Conference, where two lovely ladies gave their time to this cause and spoke on the Red Box Project in greater details. It brought tears to my eyes, hearing about what young people go through. I work in retail for a company called Wilko's. I brought this project to the attention of my manager, as Wilko is always raising money for charitable causes. As a result of spreading awareness, my manager will be speaking to head office to see what our stores can do to help. I plan also to spread awareness in my next branch meeting in order to get reps involved with rolling this out in their stores. The final point I would like to touch on is in my speech today are some other strategies I have that could have positive impact on period poverty crisis. Firstly, the government can consider offering sanitary items for families on universal credit in addition to their free dental care and NHS prescriptions. Secondly, I would like to get in contact with my local MP and councillor in Southwark to spread awareness on the Red Box project. I encourage you all to spread awareness on this great cause when you can. Please visit their website www.redboxproject.org to see what you can do to help. Thank you for listening to me today, and please feel free to speak to me if you have any further questions. Thank you. Congress, I move.
Well done, Beverly. Brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant.
President, Congress, Steve Oakes, Southern Region, motion 372, Red Box Project. So in our local branch, we've been working with the Red Box Project for about a year now. And I'd like to thank a big thank you to Donna Spicer, our Assistant Branch Secretary, who led on this. We've got red boxes now in virtually every school in the borough. We've got them in all the council offices, we've got them in local shops, and we've got them in every library. And I cannot tell you how much big difference this makes to period poverty. So I'd just like to say something really simple now. Imagine if every region, every branch of GMB around the country got these boxes into schools, got these boxes into libraries, got these boxes into local shops. We could smash period poverty. Let's do this, people. I second.
Thank you, Steve, and well done, Donna, if you're sitting up in the visitors' gallery. Mover of 373, yeah.
President, Congress, Claire Conway, Northern Region, moving motion 373. Congress, young workers face major challenges in the workday place today. Increasing pressures at school to get exam results to go on to university. Then after university, they leave with a large debt. Whether they have been to university or not, the possibility of low pay, insecure or precarious work is a worry. The use of zero-hour contracts and internships, along with high housing costs, means money worries are at the main pressures on young workers today. Congress, the problem is that bosses are not able to put themselves in the shoes of young workers. Many workplaces lack any empathy for the pressures that young people are under. The GMB has a positive relationship with our young members. Our networks are vital in bringing employers to the table to work with us and to put support mechanisms in place for young workers. But the government must also act. New legislation aimed at addressing mental health at work is vital. However, much more is needed. Affordable housing and rents, alongside a living wage that gives the workers a much better deal. We need a major shift to put additional resources into supporting employment and income. These resources need to be new resources, not at the expense of other groups in society. Congress, young workers are the future. The government and employers have a responsibility to work with us and take action. We are taking a lead in the workplace and supporting the work our young members' network do, but young workers are the future for our economy and we should invest in them, support them and protect them. I move.
Thank you, Claire. Seconder? Formally. Oh, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against these motions? No? Then I shall ask John MacDonald to come and speak on behalf of the CC. And are you going to keep to script today, John, or not?
And as a young member, you know, I'll stick to it. President Congress, John MacDonald, North Western Irish Region, speaking on behalf of the CEC on motion 369, 370 and 372. On motion 369, the CEC is asking for this motion to be referred. The CEC welcomes this motion, but believes that it would be best placed with the young members to discuss, as the young members' network sets their own campaign as a self-organised group. On motion 370, the CEC is asking for this motion to be supported with a qualification. Currently, the GMB supports a number of projects in schools and welcomes this motion at its central premise that we must support children and young people are being disadvantaged by government cuts. The qualification is that we believe regions and branches should determine the best way to engage on a local level. And as a union, we must also ensure proper safeguarding is in place. On motion 372, the CEC is asking for this motion to be supported, also with a qualification. We support the aims of the Red Box project, but all such funding decisions should be made at regional level. Therefore, Congress, please agree to refer motion 369 and to support motion 370 and 372 with the qualifications outlined. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. So does North Western Irish Region agree to refer motion 369? No. No, so the CEC would have... No, not to the CEC, Kevin, you don't. I'm sorry. So you're not... Well, hold on. So you're not agreeing to the refer. OK. Does Southern Region accept the qualifications on motions 370 and 372? Yep, OK. I think Tim would just like a quick word.
Good morning, everybody. This is a difficult one, 369, about referring. The reason the CEC are asking for it to be referred, we're saying that we should refer it to the Young Members Network for them to determine how best to deliver the sentiments of the motion. Now, usually it would be, if you're not prepared to refer it, we would oppose it as an executive. Well, of course we're not going to oppose it. We don't oppose the sentiment of the motion. We don't oppose the content of the motion. What we're saying is it's best referred to the Young Members Network for them to determine for themselves how to deliver a young workers and young members charter. So are the region not prepared to refer it? Go on, Kev. But the policy is one thing, Kev. The content of the charter is quite another, and that's what we're saying. It should be the young members who determine the content of the charter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. That is helpful. That is helpful. Yeah, there will be action. If the motion is passed, there will have to be action. So I'll put those motions to the vote. Motion 369, all those in favour, please show. Anyone against? That's carried. Motion 370 with the qualification, all those in favour, please show. Anyone against? That's carried. 372, all those in favour, please show. Anyone against? That's carried. 373, all those in favour, please show. Anyone against? That's also carried. Thank you. Okay, I've just been told that Kevin, we will be asking the young members to report back to Congress next year on the progress that has been made. Okay? So that you will see the action that has been taken on your motion. Okay? Thank you. Can I move out of motion 309? We're now on to political racism and fascism.
President, Congress, visitors. Pushpa Makwana, London Region, moving motion 309 on racism and fascism. This Congress is concerned at the rise of the far right in Britain and across the world, encouraged to crawl out of their holes and the election of the likes of Donald Trump in the USA and the xenophobia caused by Brexit. We are concerned that recent Stonewall report found that half of the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic LGBT plus people experience discrimination in the local LGBT plus community because of their ethnicity. This report also found that also in 1 in 8 people in faith and 1 in 4 LGBT plus disabled people encountered prejudice based on their identities, while a third of trans people and a quarter of bi women have experienced discrimination within LGBT plus communities. Congress, we are equally concerned about the level of discrimination faced by LGBT workers who may also be BAME and also disabled. The likelihood of BAME, trans and disabled LGBT plus workers facing harassment and discrimination in the workplace is much greater than the LGBT workers generally. 6 times as many trans people report being physically attacked as the LGBT people who are not trans. 19% of BAME LGBT plus workers and 16% of LGBT plus disabled workers have been denied jobs or promotion because of their identities compared to the 10% of LGBT plus workers in general. The politics of hate has divided us. We all have responsibility and challenges discriminatory speeches and behavior in our workplace, but also within our own communities where it is all safe to do so. We must step up and challenge all forms of discrimination, including hate speech. Congress, Brexit has also shown that there has been a strong increase of hate crimes across the country. This has led to discriminatory behaviour. As a member of a proud trade union, which has always been warned about the danger of Brexit, that is also a time for us to renew our vows and fight against hate crime and discrimination in all spheres of life. We call upon Congress to call on all strand publicity and empowering campaigns from branch level, raise awareness and equip members to challenge discrimination, hate speech by promoting messages and knowledge about inclusivity, human rights and free via speech workshop, toolkits, and in partnership with the organization, but much more visible and vocal by opposing for the far right and the head of statement against BAME, LGBT plus, women, disabled people, and those who has no particular religion affiliation. Work more closely with anti-fascist and anti-racist organizations and wider concern of campaigning groups and individuals to tackle the rise of xenophobia and promote multiculturalism and diversity. Congress, at GMB, we need training and tools at all branch level. Congress, thanks for listening. I urge to support this motion.
Thank you. Call a seconder.
President, Congress, Brian Shaw, seconding motion 309. LGBT plus hate crime is up 28% in the last 12 months. This follows a 78% increase in 2017. And this is on the basis that, as the Stonewall report found, 81% of those that experience LGBT hate crime did not report it. We only have to look at the news of the last week. In London, 2 lesbians attacked on a bus for their sexuality. And in Southampton, 2 lesbian actresses attacked as well. And also the demonstrations in Birmingham are looking to stop same-sex education in schools. I stand here as someone who has physical scars from a homophobic attack, and also one that had a homophobic verbal attack only 2 weeks ago as I walked with my partner in Crawley. And I have white male privilege. But what that does mean is I don't lower my head, I stand prouder, and I'm more passionate about delivering the change that we need to eradicate hate crime in this country. And I will continue to do that. And I will not be beaten out of me in relation to that and make it better for other LGBT plus people to do that. I know that others in this hall will have similar stories. And I ask you all to go back to your branches, regions and nations and start challenging discrimination and hate speech, but also develop training for all reps and members so they can do the same. We also need to up our game in vocalising our opposition to the far right and as well as celebrating intersectionality of our LGBT plus community. Let's make Pride what it's supposed to be. Pride grew out of the Stonewall riots 50 years ago. not a corporate advertising opportunity. Let's be on the parades, but ensure that we deliver a political message for change. I second.
Just before I call the speaker for 310, can I ask the speakers of 301, 302, 303, 304, 305, 306, 308 and emergency motion 4 to make their way to the front. Thanks, colleague.
Danny Byrne, London Region, President, Congress. When I first came to make speeches about 25 years ago, first time on the rostrum, I was absolutely terrified, all these little faces looking up at me, and I remember trembling and holding on to the stand. But over the years, I found a way of dealing with it, and now the lenses are so thick on these reading glasses that when I put them on, I can't see any of you. So I'm here to speak about motion 310, social media, social life and tackling racism. This motion notes the rise in open acts of racism in public places, making particular reference to some disturbing incidents that have occurred on Ryanair flights. We all have a duty as GMB activists to fight racism, not only in the workplace, but wherever we encounter it, in our social lives as well. The motion asks us all to do more when witnessing incidents where racism is clearly involved. We need to have the confidence to confront the perpetrator and make it clear that his or her actions are not shared or welcomed. We need to provide support for the person suffering the abuse by helping to stop it, offering support and agreeing to give witness statements when this will help bring about a successful prosecution. The motion recommends that advice on how to combat racism outside of the workplace, as well as in it, should be incorporated into the education programme for newly appointed GMB reps, as well as for long-serving GMB reps where requested. It is not enough to merely state we oppose racism. We have to actively demonstrate that we will not tolerate it. We need to actively support organisations like Show Racism the Red Card and support the footballers like Raheem Sterling and Danny Rose, who have clearly indicated that they've had enough of racist behaviour in this country. I move.
Thank you. Can I call the seconder? Is there a seconder for 310? Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against these motions? Okay, we'll go to the vote. The CEC supporting both, so I'll take them together. On motion 309 and 310, all those in favour, please show. Is there anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. I'll now call motion 301. Can the speaker come to the rostrum?
Vice President. Conference. Ricky Jones, moving motion 301, justice for Windrush generation. So what do we know? During the Second World War, many Afro-Caribbeans came to this country to support Britain, to fight alongside them in the war. After the war, Broken Britain called out to those people to come back and help them rebuild the country. They took up jobs in transport, in our hospitals, in many, many low-skilled jobs. They were granted British citizenship in 1948. And we know 1971, the immigration gave them independent rights to stay. Hundreds of people, like Junior Green, came over with their parents when the call came. He was 15 months when he came in 1958. Like many people, he never applied for a British passport. Over 60 years later, after setting foot on these shores, he found himself needing to prove he had the right to stay. He, like many others, had to find 10 years worth of paperwork. And now at this stage I'd like to ask conference, how many of you have got 10 years worth of paperwork that you could show if you was asked? When they could not find this, they faced deportation and lost jobs. Many of them were denied medical help, denied benefits, and they had to pay, beg, steal and borrow to get money to find legal representation. Like many people, Junior was deported. Junior was one of the lucky ones. He managed to get back to his home Britain. Many people did not. In the last year, 5 people have been murdered in Jamaica as a result of deportation by this country. And why? Because Theresa May, when she was the Home Secretary, thought it was a good idea to bring in this hostile environment policy. Thank God we don't have her anymore in number 10, leading our country. This motion calls on the GMB to call for a public inquiry into what has gone on, amongst other things within the motion. On the 22nd of June, there will be a Windrush Action Day. This will be happening in 6 major cities across our country. They will be causing direct action by sitting in the road and stopping traffic for 1 hour. And if they're not successful, they'll come back and do it again for 2 hours. And if they're not successful, they will come back and do it for 3 hours. Until this government realises that they need to support these people and give them the justice they deserve and make sure they can stay in this country where they belong.
You're on a red light now.
I finish now.
Quickly.
Thank you. Congress, I ask you to support the motion, and on the 22nd of June, please follow the Facebook site, Windrush Action for Justice. This will show you where these demonstrations will be taking place, and I hope, like many of you and me, we will be there to support it. Thank you.
Colleague, thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Vice President, Congress, Obi Amadi, first time moving. Motion 301, Justice for the Windrush Generation. The issue of the appalling treatment of the Windrush generation is far from resolved more than 1 year on. As my brother said, this generation came willingly to help rebuild the infrastructure of this country after the ravages of the Second World War. They left loved ones and came to the so-called mother country. They worked in the public sector and the jobs that people didn't want to do that were already here. They earned their right to be here. The Home Affairs Select Committee has said that Windrush generation may have been targeted because they were vulnerable, older, easy to deport, to hit the government's unrealistic removal targets. People lost homes, jobs, even their lives. The immigration acts that all contributed to this in 2014 and 16 turned landlords and public servants into border guards, forcing them to check documentation before renting out rooms, giving medical support, or allowing people to start jobs. People who look different, are more likely to be asked for identification, and the High Court has ruled this is discriminatory policy. The government's response? To challenge the verdict. Rather than make sure this never happens again, there's been no reform of the Home Office. It's unlikely that any of these new Conservative leadership candidates are going to investigate or make any changes regarding these failures. It's ridiculous. And we know that one of the architects of Theresa May's hostile environment has been given an honour, Glyn Williams. He's been made a Knight Commander. This has to be challenged. Do
you want to, you've got the red light, if you'd like
right,
to
okay.
just go to the conclusion.
Okay. So what I would say to you all is that we need to ensure that this cannot go on. Congress, we need to support this motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Mover of 302.
Danny Faith, London Region, moving motion 302, immigration status of EEA employees after Brexit. President, Congress, we have just heard about the impact of the hostile environment created by Theresa May and the Tories on the Windrush generation. People who should have been thanked and appreciated for their contribution in building our NHS, our public services and our cities were instead hounded and bullied, often with tragic results. European workers in Britain are now wondering whether they will be next. They have faced a climate of hostility which intensified massively after the Brexit vote. This hostility has been enshrined in the Tory plans for work permits and checks post-Brexit. The uncertainty about their future can only increase as the prospects of a no-deal Brexit continues to rise. This motion commits the GMB to fighting to ensure that EU workers retain their rights in that event. We want to send a clear message that we stand by our EU brothers and sisters no matter what happens with Brexit, whether there is a deal or whether there isn't, whether we leave or whether we remain. And we will need to continue to take this stand into the future. Because, Congress, we are kidding ourselves if we believe that the ugly anti-immigrant politics of figures like Farage are going to just disappear if and when the Brexit issue is settled. And we are also kidding ourselves if we believe that making any concessions over the immigration issue will somehow resolve this. People are angry at what's happening around them, and they're right to be angry, but they need to point that anger in the right direction. And the bosses and the bankers and the Tories who caused the mess that this country is in, rather than against their fellow workers, regardless of where they're from. Congress, I move.
Thank you, Danny. Seconder.
So, President, Congress, David Levy, London Central General Branch, London Region, seconding motion 302. I wish I could speak with the passion that Ricky had, but this is going to be a bit drier, I think. But Harold Wilson once said that a week is a long time in politics. This motion was passed at the end of the year and has not aged well due to the developments within the Brexit debate. But it was written to identify the risks to citizenship rights of EU, EEA and Swiss citizens living in the UK should the UK leave the European Union. The writing of the citizenship clauses of the withdrawal agreement will have caused some problems for the government and its counterparts in the EU. Politely put, the UK immigration regime does not want to treat all residents or even citizens as equal, a fact devastatingly illustrated by the Windrush scandal. The EU, a body of laws, finds this incomprehensible, which is one of the reasons that they require a court that until recently we found adequate to have the last word. I've watched over the years as many of my workplaces have become more multinational, and over the last 2 years how friends have chosen to move to countries where their citizenship rights are respected and, frankly, where they feel welcome. The withdrawal agreement and its increasing use of settled status is a diminishment of the rights of Brits who have lived, loved, learned here, who have contributed to our wealth and culture, started families, and in many cases will be our members, but in every case will be our neighbours. They just happen to have been born in another country. We might assume the government's flawed settled status, which has to date involved the proposed expulsion of university teachers, veterans, and many other long-term residents, involving the breakup of families, will be continued should we leave. Many will be left in a position of great uncertainty. There is, of course, a simple answer, but if we are to leave, we must do our best to provide certainty and generosity to our members, our neighbours, and our families. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Dave. Mover of motion 303.
President, Congress, Township China, London Region, moving motion 303, Children's Citizenship. Congress, on the 3rd of May 2018, a historical political victory was won by the help of Team GMB London in the local elections in Harrow. For the first time in its history, Harrow on the Hill secured 3 Labour councillors, 2 being women, and the first ever BAME councillors. Team GMB London also helped win a further historical victory in the Roxworth ward in Harrow by the election of the first ever Afghan into British public office. A phenomenal young Afghan woman, Paymana Assad, along with Honey Noble, have brought a new dynamic to Harrow politics and are all GMB members. It may have been that had Paymana or her family not been able to fund the citizenship fees for her, she would not have had the opportunity to support, help and lead on local issues. We would have been a lot poorer and the constituents of Harrow would have been denied the opportunity which Paymana delivers to the community. Also, in the recent MEP elections, we had about 5 GMB members standing as candidates. Rohit Dashgupta, myself, Jason Beckles, Claude Morass from London Region, and Javed Khan from Yorkshire and North Derbyshire region. In the London list itself, the candidates were 5 out of 8 BME. Had any of us had any of us been subject to this racist policy, it would have not been possible. This is a time when we need BAME people in Europe to fight the fascists, to look them in the eye and challenge them, and also to continue to deliver rights and protections at work. Also, these extortionate fees would have prevented the likes of Mo Farah, Rita Ora, Victor Moses, and many others who sit here today. So please, Congress, support this motion with a CC qualification.
Thanks, Tanji. Seconder.
President, Congress, I'm not sure how I can follow this. Well, it's a pleasure and a great honour to be given the opportunity to stand in front of you to second this motion on children's citizenship. Sorry, motion 303. I feel I am qualified. I have 2 degrees in youth and community work, and I've spent 14 years in youth, children's services and lifelong learning. And I've spent many of those years, 9 of them, was spent managing and running youth work projects in partnership with organisations that provided children's services, primarily to children whom had been risk assessed and deemed to be vulnerable or at risk of being socially excluded. So I'm well aware of the issues and the negative impact that some children and families have experienced when applying for citizenship. It is widely publicised that the cost today for a child's citizenship application is £1,012. The money is forfeited if the application is unsuccessful. We find that many first-time applications are unsuccessful, and in the first instance, which makes this a high-risk and an expensive process for children who have little chance of raising these funds. we find that there are only a few high-quality specialist lawyers and advisors to assist children with their applications. The CEC agrees and supports the position that children who have the right to citizenship should have easy access to getting the correct status and documentation. The CEC have also stated that it would be committed to using its political arm to reach out to the relevant political institutions in support of this motion. So with the support of the CSC in Congress, we can achieve what this motion calls for, and that is the processes involved in children's citizenship applications are made more child-friendly and the costs are fairer. The Home Office is making huge profits from these children application fees. The actual cost per application is £372. It is now time that the Home Secretary and the government are pressured to start doing something about reducing these fees for children's citizenship instead of reviewing these fees. Our resources are not allocated for us actively to seek out children needing this specialist support. Therefore, I would suggest that at a local level and in our branches, we can develop, improve and strengthen our partnership working, and also link into training provided by local authorities and agencies such as social services, police, youth services and others who provide the direct help to these children in need. Congress, please support this motion. I second.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Mover of motion 304.
Can I just add one thing, please? I'm a first-time delegate, and it was an honour for me to carry that London region banner. So thank you, London, for allowing me to do that. Thank you.
The President, Congress, and my dear invitees. I am Paulo Fernandes from Southern Region. I am moving motion 304 on residence right for foreign national or political immigration and migration. Dear Congress, many of us who have come to the UK from overseas are maybe from Commonwealth countries or from European countries or maybe asylum visa obtainer. Today, they are uncertain about legal residency right after Brexit. Even though we came here legally, we live here legally, we work here legally, we vote here legally, we pay our tax legally. This uncertainty does not only affect EU citizens when question comes of Brexit. It affects all foreign nationals. In particular, there is uncertainty about the residency status of non-EU citizens residing in UK because they are married to EU citizens who are not British citizens. When the question of immigration and migration comes, we have to go to the last general election 2015, where the question of referendum has arisen and which has taken place in 2016. From this hall, people has voted leave or remain. The result has come, leave. Then the question arises, why the country is today divided? I'll give you the two examples. We are united as far as we campaign GMB or Labour Party. When Scottish wanted to go far from the United Kingdom, we, the GMB, along with the Labour Party and other party, has shown that we want to be united. We want the Scots to be remain with the United Kingdom. This is an example. So we are not for to divide, and the Tory is for divide. How yesterday Tim Rocha, our General Secretary, has quoted, United Kingdom is not poor country, but Tory government is running in the situation of poor. Even yesterday, Sri Khan has quoted, he has challenged. He has not challenged for UK politician, but he has challenged for the United States president. He has said, he has kept the NHS on the table, but we British are not going to accept it. He has challenged, and he will do it along with the help of GMB and with the help of Labour Party. Now the question comes, how to protect us? Because once the referendum has taken place, there were a lot of incidents I personally have noticed in my eyes, at workplace as well as to my neighbors. After the result, there are a lot of cars glasses, side glasses have been smashed. There are a lot of small big violences taken place, not in Swindon and Wiltshire, even Birmingham, in Leicester, in a lot of other places. This has happened. So this is a fear. And this is how I speak on this stage. There's a fear. After the Brexit, the big question, the uncertainty, what will going to happen of the immigrant? This is a big question mark. Though I have quoted, we are living here legally, we are doing our transaction legally, we are with the British legally, we are peaceful living legally. So Congress, please support this motion for GMB to provide accessible and easy to understand guidelines for our members and their families on how to complete the formality to stay after Brexit. Congress, I move.
Thank you, Paolo. Well done. Seconder?
Vita Walfall, Southern Region, seconding motion 304, residency rights for foreign nationals. President, Congress, I'm in agreement that the Brexit process has thrown a great deal of uncertainty over the UK immigration policy. This confusion extends to EU, Commonwealth, and other states. The new rules will become effective from the 1st of November 2019. This uncertainty is affecting people's lives. Their families are in limbo. And employers are uncertain as to how this is going to affect their companies. Hence, people could be in danger of losing their jobs. An online document from the European Commission states that they aim to provide information to help EU citizens make their own decision about Brexit and their current situation in the UK. However, they do not assume responsibility if anyone acts on this information. The document is very long-winded and complicated. The situation is becoming as confusing as the recent Windrush scandal. We recently celebrated the 70th anniversary of the NHS. Can I ask Congress to also bear in mind and remember the contribution, the great contribution that the people that arrived on HMS Windrush gave to this country. They cleaned, they drove the buses, they did the works, the menial jobs that people didn't want to do. And I think it's important that we remember that contribution.
Vita, do you want to just second your motion?
It is our responsibility as a union to support our members in order for them to provide them with information that is accessible and easy to understand. I second this motion.
Thank you. Well done. Mover of motion 305.
Vanessa Sibbald from the London region. I'm moving motion 305 on Brexit and union support for EU workers. Greetings, President and Congress. We're all at this point very tired of Brexit, but lost in all the articles of whether we leave or we remain are the actual people that are living and working in the UK, who now face tremendous uncertainties about what their future in this country will look like. Many of them are GMB members like me, and as someone who's been living and working in the UK for the past 10 years, Brexit is not just an immigration issue, but an issue about workers' rights. Will we be discriminated against because of our nationality? And also, will we be referred to as migrant workers even though we consider ourselves active workers or active participants and residents in the UK? There are 3 million EU citizens working in the UK. For them, this past year has been an increasingly stressful time where they've been told conflicting information about what will happen to their livelihood and what, well, we assume, the immediate future. They need to get support from the union in getting accurate information and a place to go where they can get help protecting their workers' rights. While the government has promised to protect EU citizens, there is already confusion in regards to those that are permanent residents, those that are in the process for citizenship, and those that are being asked to apply for settled status. Confusion about this form and who needs to fill it out resulted in approximately 2 million EU citizens who live and pay taxes in the UK not being able to vote in the recent EU elections. We expect more confusion as workplaces become involved and are concerned that this group may be given misinformation by HR offices or treated differently based on their nationality. We ask that Congress support this motion and ensure that the GMB provides the following resources for these members: a page on the National GMB website with updated information regarding EU worker rights in regards to Brexit, union line resources devoted to giving these workers advice about their rights and updated information on any processes to be followed, updated information for workplace organizers on how to protect workers' rights if they come under attack. Congress, we welcome the support from the CEC for this motion and the qualification, welcoming the new national documents to help us navigate through these confusing times. Many thanks.
Well done, Vanessa, thank you. Seconder? Formally, okay, thank you. Mover of motion 306.
Javad Khan, Yorkshire and North Derbyshire region. Also proud to be part of the GMB Young Members National Committee. And for all those cheering, we've got a fringe at lunchtime, so make sure you pop along. First time delegate, first time speaker, moving motion 306. President, Congress, this uncaring, destructive Conservative government has made a complete mess of implementing Brexit. We've seen the withdrawal agreement voted down several times. We've seen 2 prime ministers resign, and we've seen the issues that matter to our members, like secure jobs and proper investment in our public services, pushed right down the political agenda. But Congress, we cannot forget the human cost of this Tory government's incompetence. We have 3 million people in this country who are from other EU nations. That's 4.6% of our country's population. We may have some of them here with us today, and I'm sure many of you work side by side alongside EU nationals in your workplaces. But their lives have been turned upside down by this government. A responsible government would have guaranteed their rights to remain and work in the UK from day one. Instead, they were used as a bargaining chip in the Brexit negotiations. But it won't be government ministers or EU commissioners who face being shut out of the workplace or deported from the country they've chosen to call home. The government finally created a process for EU nationals in the UK gaining settled status. However, this is a process of application rather than registration, meaning that applicants can be rejected despite arriving and living here legally. As well as this, the government demanded a £65 fee for those wishing to apply for settled status. Whilst we welcome the abolition of this fee, it should never have existed in the first place. What kind of society are we where we charge people simply to continue living in a country they've already made their home? Congress, this is just the latest development in a trend of a Home Office that doesn't care for our migrant brothers and sisters. We saw Theresa May bring out the disgraceful go-home vans. We saw the Windrush scandal with dozens, maybe even hundreds of people wrongly deported. Now we see this government preparing for EU migrants to be the latest victim of their destructive policies and lack of empathy. Instead of a hostile environment for migrants, we need a hostile environment for bad employers who exploit workers and divide the working class in this country. Congress, we demand reform to the current system to make it easier for EU nationals to register for settled status and for alternatives to the current online-only system to be created. As the system is online-only, it is inaccessible for those who don't have access to smartphones or do not have English as a first language. This excludes too many people from the process and must be changed to make the settled status registration scheme accessible for all. But more than anything, we need to send a message of solidarity and support for EU nationals, because if the Tories think we'll let them throw migrant workers under the bus, they're in for a shock. But Congress, we shouldn't value these people just by their contribution to the economy. We should value these people because they are just that, people. They are not a statistic or a number. They are our friends, our colleagues, our family, and they deserve our unwavering support and solidarity. Because whether you're a GMB member who was born in the UK or in Europe or anywhere else in the world, your union is on your side. Congress, please support this motion. I move.
Well said. Perfect timing.
How do I follow that one? Cindy Gavin, Yorkshire and North Derbyshire region, seconding motion. You are awake, 306. Congress, a little bit of background about the so-called application system. If you're an EU, an EAA or Swiss citizen to continue to live in the UK after June 2021, you have to apply to the EU settlement scheme. To do this, you've got to be living in the UK before it leaves the EU, and after Brexit, should it happen, the deadline is December 2020. If successful, your application, you will either gain settled or pre-settled status, and this is dependent on the length of time you're actually living in the UK already. If unsuccessful in your application, you can only apply for an admin review. You cannot appeal that decision. This leaves nationals in fear of not being able to continue to work and to live in UK. Congress, the term application, as defined in the dictionary, means a formal request to be considered for a position or allowed to do something. As we all know, we've been for jobs, applications can be denied. And this fear of potentially having to leave a country they have called home cannot be good for a person's mental health or well-being. This could mean having to return to a country that has become alien to them, when they have in fact lived and worked in the UK the majority of their life. They've put down roots, made friends, and become active members of their community. They work hard, pay taxes, and boost our economy. Whilst the economic benefits are welcome, we must also value these people as being part of our communities, our diversity, part of our British values. We value them not only as our workforce, but as human beings. Moving from application to registration would ensure their right to do so, their right to still stay here, to work and to live in the UK. As it is, many people struggle to get the correct documents to support their application. And Congress, did you also know that to apply for pre-settled or settled status, this also applies to those working and living in the UK before we actually joined the EU in 1973?
Cindy, you got the red light. Yeah. Can you conclude?
Congress, I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Mover of motion 308.
President, Congress, Rhiannon Williams, Wales and South West, move in motion 308, modern day slavery. First time delegate, first time speaker. Congress. Most people assume that slavery only exists overseas. However, it is thriving in the UK. People are trafficked into forced labour, such as construction, manufacturing, and in car washes. Women and girls are trafficked into sexual exploitation, and children are forced into crime, such as petty theft. Violence is threatened or used against victims and families. If this wasn't bad enough, officials are now seeing new forms of exploitation that fall under the definition of modern-day slavery, such as children being forced to commit crimes for gangs and the recruitment of rough sleepers. Laws introduced in 2015 included tougher sentences and more help for people forced into labouring, domestic servitude, sex work and other tasks. In Northern Ireland and Scotland, the government has attempted to tackle this by passing the Modern Day Slavery Act 2015, as well as the Human Trafficking and Exploitation, Criminal Justice and Support for Victims Act. This legislation recognises and attempts to tackle the offences of slavery and servitude. Businesses with a global turnover of over 36 million must now provide a statement setting out the steps they have taken to ensure that there is no modern-day slavery in their own business and in their supply chain. The Human Trafficking and Exploitation Criminal Support for Victims Act, Northern Ireland and Scotland, contains statutory duties to provide support to victims. This legislation guarantees victims support during the initial period whilst the potential victim's case is being determined. In 2015, the government introduced the new Modern Day Slavery Act. However, due to Conservative government cuts, support is patchy at best. Theresa May and her successors as Home Secretary have in fact made it harder, not easier, to access help. This current government is responsible for cuts in weekly benefits to asylum-seeking victims of trafficking from £65 a week to roughly £37. This has affected around 1,000 people. This included a 30-year-old Albanian woman who found herself in the hands of traffickers when she refused to marry a man her family had selected for her. Due to the cuts, she was unable to afford travel to therapy and vocational training, leaving her socially isolated. She then tried to take her own life. Luckily, she was strong enough to summon the strength to take the government to court to challenge the cuts, and she won. The judge ordered the government not just to reverse the cuts, but to pay back all the money they had taken from victims. Congress notes that victims still struggle to access specialised support. It is unacceptable that victims of modern-day slavery in England and Wales do not have the same rights. This Congress calls on the CEC to lobby government for a direct right and pathway to long-term support for victims. Please support. I move.
Well done, Royale. Well done. Seconder.
Elaine Morgan, Wales and South West Region, seconding motion 308, Modern Day Slavery. President, Congress. Victims of modern-day slavery identified in England and Wales have significantly fewer statutory support entitlements than in Scotland and Northern Ireland, even though a recent High Court ruling has put pressure on the government to review its support provision. An individual who has been enslaved can enter the national referral mechanism and access support ranging from healthcare, housing and legal aid, while this government decides whether or not to recognise them as a victim. But this support ends after 45 days, after someone is formally identified as a victim. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, this is a minimum of 90 days. Victims are scared, powerless and alone, and support should be based on need and not short-term. We're running the risk of victims being drawn back into exploitation as a means of survival. The Scotland and Northern Ireland Act transposed the minimum support standards set out in the Trafficking Convention and Directive, and in some ways goes beyond them. The Modern Day Slavery Act does not place a duty on authorities to provide support or protect the victims. Victim support entitlements are instead to be detailed in statutory guidance. To ensure parity of care for adults and children across the UK, this guidance and any related regulations must mirror the support provisions in Scotland and the Northern Ireland Act. Please support this motion. I second.
Thank you, Elaine. Mover of the emergency motion number 4.
Thanks, I'm not that short. President, Congress, Fevzi is saying, very proud to move emergency number 4 on behalf of the London region on a hostile environment mastermind who's been rewarded in the Queen's honours. Quick thank you to the SOC for accepting the emergency motion. And I'd like to quickly also acknowledge the response of this trade union when the scandal broke out. I think our General Secretary was one of the first, if not the first, to issue a statement condemning the government and urging support for anyone caught up in the scandal. So thank you, Tim. Congress, we know when brothers and sisters have been taken for a mug. It's difficult to remain calm and collected on this subject when we see such blatant racism being rewarded by this government. So, conference, it's time for a comparison check. What happens to our members when they are found to have done something wrong at work? Let's say, for argument's sake, that a member did something that brought their employer into disrepute and the employer suffered reputational damage. What would happen? We all know the answer, right? So when we talk about the Windrush scandal, and this being the largest scandal to hit the government in recent times, and trust me, there's been a few of those, we all agree that the government's actions on the Windrush scandal has brought it, and in particular the Home Office, which is responsible for immigration, into disrepute. We can also say that there has been immeasurable reputational damage for this government. Ultimately, it cost Amber Rudd, the then Home Secretary, her job. On Windrush, Rudd apologised and said the treatment of West Indians was, I quote, appalling. So, despite colonisation, despite slavery, 25,000 Caribbean men went on to serve in both world wars. When men and women began to arrive in our great country in 1948, they did so as British citizens. Congress, we still don't know the true cost of the Windrush scandal. We don't know how many children of Windrush were denied healthcare, or denied their pensions, or who lost their jobs as a result of being unable to prove their UK citizenship. What an absolute scandal this remains to this day. So, Congress, you can imagine the scowl on my face when I saw, just hours after she left 10 Downing Street, after going down as possibly the worst ever Prime Minister, Theresa May announces that Glyn Williams, I haven't got nothing personal against you, Glyn, but head of immigration in the Home Office, he has been awarded, as the sister said earlier, the Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath. Basically, Mr. Williams was the policy mastermind behind the hostile environment. Absolutely. A person responsible for making the lives of so many West Indian men, women, and their families a complete misery. Consequently, even forcing some to lose their lives. I don't say that lightly, Congress. Dexter Bristol is proof of that. A 57-year-old man when he died, he could not get his passport sorted out, which in turn meant he could not prove he was a citizen, which in turn meant he could not prove, which in turn meant he lost his job, and which in turn meant he didn't get any benefits. And he died from the stress and anxiety caused by this government.
Evsey, you got the red light.
Okay. It's been an excellent debate, Congress, but as the motion states, I think it's essential that we campaign to get this award stripped. We can't reward racism. We can't reward institutional racism. This is an obscene reward, and we need to campaign to have Glyn Williams stripped of this preposterous award. I move.
Thank you. Well done.
President, Congress, friends, brothers, sisters, comrades, Windrush Desai, London Region, GMB, and also a Labour cooperative and GMB member sitting on the Greater London Authority representing City and East London. I know I only got 2 minutes to make 5 points, but can I start off by paying tribute to our departed comrade, Gary Doolan. When some of us decided to launch London United, a coalition of trade unions and the London Labour Party to oppose the rise of the far right, I turned to Gary for advice. And my last conversation with Gary was via text message. And I still recall Gary texting me in the early hours of the morning when his medication allowed him to do so. And he said, go for it, go and see Warren, get the show going. And Gary, as I said at London Labour Conference, this resolution is all about you, is for you. So thank you for everything you did, Gary, and for all the help and advice you gave me and others in launching London United. The New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, made a call for a global movement to root out racist right-wing ideology. So how do we localize that global movement? The words of Max Levitas, a veteran of Cable Street, come to mind. I spoke alongside Max at the 80th anniversary of Cable Street, and this is what he had to say. Shape history, because if you don't shape history, history will shape you. So how do we shape history? Comrades, there are 5 areas that I think we're going to consider our work around, and this is what London United seeks to do. Firstly, the need for political education and training for our members for the 6 million strong trade movement is greater than ever. What do groups like the DFLS stand for? We could expose the politics of hate by offering the politics of hope. We stand for unity, they stand for division. So it's that training, that political education that is so necessary now more than ever. It is the 6 million trade union members and the 500,000 members of the Labour Party who form the bedrock of opposition to the far right. Secondly, the sporting arena. Groups like the so-called Democratic Football Lads Alliance are going to expose what they are. And we're going to fight the hostile environment on all fronts. Thirdly, culture. One of the great things about the Anti-Nazi League, which brought me into politics, was the rock against racism. Now, we can't live on sentiment. That was in the past. But there are initiatives like Love Music, Hate Racism that need to be supported. Groups like Show Racism Red Card, who are going to be doing a lunchtime presentation. Their work is absolutely invaluable. So culture, sports, the political education.
Amish, you've got the red light.
Yeah. And I will finish in a second, President.
Can you conclude, please?
And linking up with community groups. As we saw in Barking-Dagenham, that was the key. I will finish on this note conference. The need for unity is greater than ever.
No. Umish, please, can you go to move this?
I will recall the ones of Pastor Nimola. First they came for the Jews and they didn't speak out because they're not a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists and they didn't speak out because they're not a trade unionist. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak for me. No Pasara, solidarity.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I have to cut you off. Does anyone wish to speak against? Can I ask Colin to respond, please?
President, Congress, Colin Gunter speaking on behalf of the CEC. The CEC are supporting motion 303, 304, 305 with qualifications. On motion 303, the CEC absolutely supports a campaign to ensure that children who have rights of citizenship have easy access to getting correct status and documentation. The qualification is that branch resources aren't likely to be able to go far enough to seek out children in care to see if they need this particular help. So the GMB would be committed to using our political arm to reach out to the relevant political institutions. Motion 304, the CC's qualification is while GMB is able to share and provide some guidance on these matters, we do not employ immigration advisors. As such, we cannot provide detailed individual advice about members' residence status. However, we should be able to share relevant information and signposts to appropriately qualified advice organisations. On motion 305, our qualification is rather than to circulate the London region's toolkit throughout all regions, the CC believes that the good practice from London region should be incorporated alongside the good practice of other GMB regions for a national set of documents for branches and members to use. This is consistent with the CC's special report on Equality Organisation 2018, which called for a consistent and joined-up approach, including national materials where required. Therefore, this Congress, the CC is asking for motions 303, 304 and 305 to be supported with the qualifications I've laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Does London Region accept the qualifications on motions 303 and 305? Thank you. And does Southern accept the qualification on motion 304? Yes? Yes, thank you. The CEC are supporting 301, 302, 306, 308 and emergency motion 4. And because there's been opposition, I'm going to put them all to the vote in one go. And the regions have supported the qualifications. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? All those motions are carried. Yeah. We now move on to social policy general. So can I call the movers and seconders of motion 321, 322, 323 and 324?
President, Congress, Mark Watson, London Region, moving motion 321, heat the next inequality issue. The weather across the world is becoming more extreme, and for the purpose of this motion, it doesn't matter whether you believe that that has been caused by natural causes or by man-made pollution. In August 2003, a heatwave struck Europe. In urban France, where conditions were the worst, 14,802 people were reported to have died from heat-related causes. The heat wave happened in August, when the government was on holiday. The emergency services were overwhelmed. The French attitude to older people was castigated, with many older people seemingly abandoned as their younger relatives went on holiday. The UK escaped the worst of the heat wave because of their position as an island. Despite this, the UK Heat Health Watch system reported a potential 2,000 extra deaths at this time. Now, even though we as a species crave sunlight, our bodies, our frailties, and our modern lifestyle make us particularly susceptible to abnormal heat. And it is the most vulnerable amongst us that suffer the most, and it's a long list. Babies and young children get heat stress quickly, and they don't show the same symptoms that adults do. Older children suffer because they are smaller than adults and weigh less. Pregnant women are more sensitive to heat and have a higher body temperature. People with chronic conditions, particularly those involving the heart and breathing. People with mobility problems, those who have had a stroke or have Parkinson's. People with serious mental health issues. People who misuse alcohol, homeless people, people on medications that affect their sweating and temperature control, even people who are physically fit and who work outside, such as labourers. The advice that we give is good and sound. Stay indoors, do not walk out in the middle of the day, have cold baths, but it does not go far enough and it does not reach everyone. Our cities are old-fashioned, and they are not built for heat. Montreal in Canada suffered a 5-day heat wave in 2010, which resulted in the deaths of 106 people. During that time, the officials of the city distributed 17,000 litres of water to organisations which work with the city's homeless. They extended the opening hours at swimming pools. Firemen and police officers visited around 5,000 homes to check in on vulnerable persons. Afterwards, the city produced the Montreal Heat Response Plan, a plan designed to reduce the effects of excess heat on the population for the future. This conference calls upon local authorities across the UK to adopt and put into action a heat action plan as part of a campaign calling for practical steps to be taken to mitigate and minimise the adverse effects of climate change and global warming on low-income people and on GMB members. Congress, I move.
Thank you, Mark. Seconder.
Congress, Esme Chinara, London Ambulance Branch, London Region, seconding motion 321 Heat, the next inequality issue, a first-time delegate and a second-time speaker. Congress, climate change is a trade union issue. It's a trade union issue because it affects all of us. It affects the planet that we live on and the basis of life on Earth itself. But we know it doesn't affect everybody equally. We already know that climate change is disproportionately impacting on those in the poorest parts of our globe. And also, in Europe, in Britain, across this part of the world, we also see that extreme weather events or changes in our climate or heating up of our climate impact disproportionately on the poorest in our society. And as the mover of the motion mentioned, heat can be fatal. The World Health Organization, looking at 15 countries in Europe, showed a rise in deaths of up to 33% during any heat wave. It impacts disproportionately, not just on those on lower incomes and older people and infants that we've talked about, but we also have to think about the impact of hot weather on many of our workers who work outdoors or work in vehicles, who again are affected by the rising temperatures. And the real thing here, Congress, is that the impact of heat, the adverse effects of heat on the most vulnerable people in society and on our members and workers is entirely predictable, and much of it is preventable. But we live in a system that puts profit before people, and that is destroying our planet, and that is impacting on the poorest people in society. It has been inspiring to see the actions of thousands of school students walking out of their lessons to say they're going to take a stand against climate change. For their futures and our futures, we need to raise our game. We need to fight to stop climate change and climate chaos, but we also need to fight for plans like this to organise to mitigate against the worst effects on the poorest people in society.
Thank you, Esme. Mover of motion 322.
Paul Tony, Southern Region, moving motion number 322, funeral costs, pay now but die later. Conference, as we know, there are two things that are guaranteed in life, which is being born and dying, and it's dying what comes at a cost. As many of you may have seen on TV, you can now start paying for your own funeral in advance, knowing that your loved ones don't need to pay anything once you have gone, but this is not the case. What many people don't understand is that these plans have hidden costs, like admin charges, costs if the plans are not fully paid, and so on, which mean that often during your loved one's time in mourning, they are being asked to pay the difference, and in some cases with interest. Conference, it's vital that GMB campaigns to highlight these hidden costs these companies, these plans have, and to get the companies that provide such plans to show what all costs are in advance, so our loved ones are not burdened with the extra, to pay the extra in their time of mourning. I move.
Thank you, Paul. Seconder.
Madam President. I'm so proud of you. Okay, Shireen Thompson, Southern Region, second-time delegate, second-time speaker. And I'm the missing girl that Dean was talking about yesterday. I'm here to second the motion 322, pay now, die later. Congress, there are 3 things which are guaranteed in life: birth, death, and taxes, even when you're dead. I always said that a dead man has no power. But if our Mary Turner can hear this motion, I'm sure she would be turning in her grave and stirring up a thunder. May her soul rest in peace. As we celebrate 130 years of GMB existence, by the way, happy birthday to Michael Husbands of CEC. Happy birthday to you. And I do actually have a husband called Michael as well. Anyway, back to the motion. Congress, the sad reality is that right now our members are going through a loss of a loved one, family members, colleague, friend or a neighbour. And I'm saddened at the thought that unregulated and unethical companies that exist to exploit our grieving families. I am appalled to hear the hidden and unexpected extra bills of what is already a difficult time for our families. I'm appalled at some of the companies who sell their plans with little dignity, as if selling Everest double glazing. I advocate for GMB to challenge these unethical funeral plans and the commissioning fees to be revealed, some of them as high as £1,000. I call upon GMB to challenge these funeral plans, and also I call upon us to fight these unregulated and unethical companies. Roll of thunder, hear my cry. I second this motion.
Thank you, Shireen. Mover of motion 323.
Morning, everyone. President, Congress, Mervyn Edwards, Birmingham and West Midlands region. Virgin delegate, second-time speaker, motion 323. Why should Congress support the beleaguered, besieged, downtrodden, undervalued public house? Well, I guess the answer is in the question. Congress, we've always been ready to fight for the underdog, and the pub couldn't be more of an underdog even if it sat up on its hind legs and slobbered all over your lap. Recent reports have stated that a quarter of the UK's pubs have closed since 2001, and as many as 14 pubs closed per week in the second half of 2018. The Campaign for Real Ale has stated only recently that pubs contribute £23 billion to the economy every year and £13 billion in tax, as well as creating thousands of jobs. The reasons for the decline of the pub are multifarious, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't tell you that one of them is plain bad management. However, for all those thousands of decent pubs struggling to make ends meet, there are ongoing issues, not least against the prevailing policies of central government. Crippling business rates and VAT have affected many pubs, and then there is the matter of beer duty. The UK has one of the highest beer tax rates in Europe. It's 3 times the EU average. The government harvests £3.5 billion every year in beer duty, as well as a considerable sum in additional taxes on pubs and brewers. To put it in context, 1 in every £3 spent in the pub goes to the taxman, and this in turn creates rising prices for the customer. Clearly, the government needs to do far more to save our pubs, particularly the non-chain pubs, from extinction. You can access further information about the plight of the pub from the Office for National Statistics website. But I stand here today hoping to appeal to your hearts as well as your heads. Firstly, I've been a pub goer for over 35 years, and talking to people in pubs has been very much a part of my own education. Well, it's taught me a few lessons anyway. Secondly, and I speak as a humble branch president of the GMB, pubs have offered us convenient places to hold meetings, and I'm grateful for that. Thirdly, part of the work I do in Stoke-on-Trent involves working with elderly people in the community who may have become lonely, isolated, or otherwise disenfranchised. And I've found that the public house is one of several valuable social outlets for people who fall into this category. Pubs provide a social environment that enables us to do what working class people always used to do so well. Communicate, be creative, think laterally, and swap ideas on major issues. The very best pubs offer all this and more. There's one in Longton, Stoke-on-Trent, where I come from, the Congress. I thought you'd like the name. I've observed warts and all humanity in pubs. I've hopefully sharpened my wit in pubs. I've laughed, I've cried, I've loved and I've lost in pubs. I'm sure you'll all agree, this is pretty impressive for one night, but seriously, pubs should only ever be one of the many meeting places for trade unionist meetings. But I would urge Congress to acknowledge the role they continue to play in the unfolding story of working class life. I move.
Well said. Well done, Mervyn. Seconder?
President, Congress, Paula de Vries, Birmingham and West Midlands region, seconding motion number 323. I second the motion for the following reasons. Pubs offer a relaxed atmosphere and they hold a mirror up to society. In a pub, human communication is generally unregarded and honest. Through our personal interaction with other pub goers, we learn about the good and the bad in people. Sharing our triumphs and successes with friends in a pub surely beats doing the same thing on social networking. Pubs can teach. In a pub, we might well learn about prejudice in society and from there address it and re-educate the ignorant or misguided. And in recent years, it's been the pub's ability to multitask that has shown us how valuable it can be to communities. With the nation having to struggle to cope with the government's ideological preference for austerity, pubs in some areas have come to the rescue in the face of public service cutbacks. Rural pubs especially have extended their service to provide post offices, libraries, shops, cafes and children's play areas. Some of the funding for this has admittedly come from government and perhaps may be seen as a sop to communities whose public services may have been lost through cuts, but there's no denying potential of pubs as a means of bringing people together through widening the scope of services they offer. Even better, many pubs may have been taken over by communities as cooperatives. How good does that sound to us, trade unionists? I therefore second motion 323 that public houses be recognised as a community amenity and that Congress supports them wherever possible as venues for our meetings, thus helping preserve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Mover of motion 324.
Carol Clarkson, Middle and East Coast region, move a motion 324, online gambling must be controlled by government. President, Congress, visitors, may I make it clear I'm not asking for nationalisation, but to put in safeguards as they did in betting shops when they capped the amount of money you could put in for one bet. When that happened, a lot of betting shops closed down. So you can see how much money they were taking on them one-armed bandits. Denise Coates, CBE, has made over £1 billion out of online gambling. And now she has a CBE. Well, where's the morality in that? Why am I so worried about online gambling? Well, in times when even toddlers have got mobile phones and they're playing games and they're watching videos, there's your teenage kids. They have the phone with them, breakfast, dinner and tea. They even take it to bed with them. Unmonitored. We don't know whether they're gambling on it or not. We don't see it. Once these online gambling sites have a bank account number, they suck that bank account dry. They even access your overdraft without any question. People are put into debt and can't see a way out. So they try to gamble the way out. And there's the gambling spiralling out of control. The people who are feeling out of control, in despair, in debt, causing depression and suicide. How can we protect those people from being pressured, bombarded with excessive gambling adverts from online gambling sites, encouraging the gamblers to lose some more money they can't afford to lose? These sites are preying on the poor and vulnerable of this world. There are very little checks on age, as long as you've got an email address, a bank card. It doesn't have to be your own, by the way. And by the way, you've got to tick a little box that says you're over 18, yeah? So now we know you're over 18, so you can gamble as much as you like. The gambling problem is an epidemic of proportions, and under 16s are also involved. Yeah, children going into debt and becoming addicted to gambling. I'm asking our GMB MPs to lobby the government to control this rip-off of the working class men, women and children, to safeguard the vulnerable. This is a working class problem. We are working class people. Please support this motion. It's a growing problem. I move.
Well done, Carol. Thank you. Seconder for motion 324.
The Bush's Day, Midlands and East Coast region. President, brothers and sisters, I think Sister Carol has given the from the heart some of the problems. I won't repeat some of the things, it's just to give a few statistics. Because whilst researching this motion, I was amazed by some of the facts that I found online. As Carol already said, there's already been legislation passed to cap high-spend gambling on fixed-odd betting terminals. But this is against a backdrop of profits in the online gambling sector, the remote sector as they call it, which saw a rise from 3.9 billion to 4.9 billion between 2016 to 18. And a shift over with over 50% of gambling, which used to be included the flutter for races and football on the high street, has moved to mobile phones and tablets. Some of you may be having this in your family without realizing this. This trend has seen the move from the high street outlets to e-gambling and cyberspace, and along with this has started a hidden epidemic of addiction, debt and isolation. From a recent report, there were 430,000 gambling addicts in the UK, with an estimated 25,000 thought to be 16 or under. The Gambling Commission has stated the rise of problem gamblers in the UK
overall with the gambling affecting younger people under 16 being of more concern than underage drinking. I didn't know this myself.
Debashis, you've got the red light, if you could just conclude.
With the modern age, new problems have emerged. And what are the solutions? We say there should, advertising should be targeted. Tom Watson MP has stated that gambling laws were not fit for the 21st century. We have brought this to light. Action must be taken. Profits from this section must be taxed.
Move them. Second the motion.
And I second this motion.
Does anyone wish to speak against those motions? Then can I ask Margie Clark on the behalf of the CEC to respond?
President, Congress, Margie Clark speaking on behalf of the CEC. The CEC are supporting motion 323 with qualifications and seeking the referral of motion 324. On motion 323, the CEC's qualification is that using public houses as venues, wherever possible, should not mean as a default venue of choice, as we need to accommodate members' needs. GMB has previously outlined the need for meeting venues to be reasonably accessible, and the 2014 CEC interim report, special report on GMB branches, A Future That Works, stress the importance of meetings taking place in a safe, welcoming environment conducive to the conduct of the branch meeting. All meeting venues should be in line with these aims. Moving on to motion 324, the CEC agrees that better checks and regulation need to be placed on online gambling sites to help curb addiction. Having heard the speakers on the motion talk passionately on this issue, it has further explained the intentions of this motion. We had concerns that the motion was calling for the industry to be nationalised. We are suggesting that this motion be referred to look into this matter. Therefore, Congress, the CEC is asking for motion 323 to be supported with the qualifications I have laid out, and motion 324 to be referred. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Does Birmingham accept the qualification on 323? Not to the CEC, I'm sorry. Does Birmingham accept the qualification on 323? Yes? Does Midlands agree to refer motion 324? No, then we have to oppose it. Okay, I'll put those to the, I've got now put the individually. Well, 321, 322, the CC are supporting, so all those in favour, please show. Anyone against? 323, Birmingham supported with qualification, all those in favour, please show. Anyone against? 324, the CEC are opposing, all those in favour of the motion, please show. All those against? That's carried. It's carried. Last debate of the morning before show racism red card. Rule amendments, can I ask, we will now debate rule amendments 459, 460, 471 and 472. But as these rules are linked to one another, the region has agreed to move all four in one speech, and you seconding all in one speech. So can I ask the mover of those rule amendments to come up, please?
President, Congress, Jan Smith, London Region. Moving 4 related rule amendments in one block, which I thank you for allowing us to do that. That is Rule Amendment 459, 460, 471 and 472 with agreement from this SOC and the Chair. Congress, I appreciate that this does not give me 4 times the speaking time, but I feel I need some time to explain our reasoning behind these rule changes. Those of you who came to Congress in 2017 may remember me challenging the SOC report number 1. Our branch wanted to introduce a branch retired officer position, and so we put in a rule amendment on Rule 38. We were told at that time this was out of order, as we couldn't change one rule. We had to make 3 consequential rule changes in order that the rule book was complete. The SOC chair helpfully told me what 4 rules the branch needed to change in order that the rule book makes sense and follows through what we had intended. The chair quoted us of a verbatim paragraph from the CEC Working Party Special Report, which has been carried at Congress 2014. Moving back to this year as identified by the SOC, our branch came prepared and we put in these 4 rule changes to Rule 18.2a, Rule 18.5 and Rule 35.3. Congress, I just want to add that as you have supported Rule Amendment 451 on Sunday, no branch will ever be able to put in 4 rule changes at once. So the rule book would be incomplete and rule changes would be ruled out of order in the future. Very briefly, these rule changes are about allowing branches to create extra branch positions. Rule Amendment 459 adds to the definition of officers, so it is clear that branches can appoint non-core positions, provided this is outlined in the branch development plan and this meets the requirement and needs of the branch. Rule Amendment 460 allows for all core and non-core branch officers to be eligible for offices. Rule Amendment 471 inserts the exact agreed wording from the 2014 CEC Special Report, which is Congress policy, and I repeat, Congress policy. This makes it crystal clear that the positions in Rule 35.3 are core branch positions, and the Special Report wording covers non-core positions, allowing for branches to fill or not fill other branch office positions accordingly to the needs of the branch, adding that these needs need to be defined by branch by laws set out in your branch plan and agreed by your regions. Finally, Rule Amendment 472 adds in a new rule, 38C, to say that any other branch officer outside the core positions will be responsible for fulfilling their role as defined by the bylaws and the branch plan. Since 2014, we have seen that where a branch puts in the motions or rule amendments to create new branch positions, they are always quoted the wording from the 2014 report, and their motion or rule change is out of order. Congress, let's stop this from happening. These rule changes makes it clear for all branches to create positions such as health and environment officers, LGBT officer or women's officer. The CEC is asking us to withdraw all four amendments, and their reasoning is that there is already provision in the 2014 special report to allow for this, so our rule amendments would not add anything to the rule book.
Jen, you've actually had 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
So
with respect, Congress, put this in order and let us have one rule book put in context. Here is the report, here is the rule book. Common sense prevails. One rule book for everything. I move.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Are you formally seconding? There is a seconder, okay.
President, Congress, Heather Hamblin, London Region, seconding these four related rule amendments, RA 459, 460, 471 and 472. Taking you back again, our President, Barbara Plant, was on the branch working party, and in her moving speech on the CEC Special Report in 2014, she told Congress that the report allowed for branches to have any position to meet their needs, provided this is agreed by the branch and in their bylaws and branch development plan, and that any new branch position is endorsed by the regional committee. As Janice explained, these rule changes are putting the exact wording from the 2014 CEC report into our rule book, which will enhance it. Otherwise, a new branch secretary will have to be aware of the 2014 report and also know where to find it. Do you know how to access it? Congress, the branch secretary's handbook on our national website doesn't even refer to the 2014 special report and doesn't clarify if core or non-core positions. So how do branches know about this? We should be encouraging branches to fill their branch positions and maybe create new ones, such as a health and environment officer, so we improve engagement. Congress, we know that branches can and do appoint other branch positions, but we want to make the rule book crystal clear and a one-stop shop, and to prevent further rule amendments motions calling for other branch positions. What we are proposing is already Congress policy, so why not put it in the rule book where it belongs? Please support these four rule changes, as this is the last year that any branch will be able to do this. I move.
Thank you, Heather. Does anybody wish to speak against? In that case, can I ask Gordon Richardson from the CEC to respond, please?
Congress. Gordon Richardson, on behalf of the CEC, responding to rule amendments 459, 460, 471 and 472. Congress. All these rule amendments seek to change your rules, not the CEC's rules, your rules, to state that branches can appoint additional non-core posts within the branch. The CEC has tried to engage with the branch to establish what problem this amendment aims to solve without success. The CEC is clear that in 2014, Congress adopted the Branch Review Special Report, which absolutely clarified the mechanism for appointing non-core posts under the present rules. These rule changes are therefore unnecessary. The amendment would have no impact on how a branch can fill any non-core posts it wants. And the CEC is seeking the withdrawal of all 4 amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Does London Region agree to withdraw the rule amendments? No. Okay. Okay. In that case, the CEC will be opposing. Can I put the rule amendments to the vote? All those in favour of the rule amendments, please show. All those against? That's lost. That concludes the business of the day, but we can go on to the regional success stories. Congress will move on to the third and final series of our regional success stories, celebrating the work of Southern Region, Wales and South West Region, and Midlands and East Coast Region since our last Congress. Delegates are warned that the following videos contain flashing images and flash photography. Great stuff. It's my great pleasure to welcome Leroy Rosini onto the platform. Leroy played as a striker for clubs including West Ham, Fulham and Queen's Park Rangers. He later, let's not start the football thing again. He later managed Torquay, Brentford and the Sierra Leone national side. Leroy was last year appointed MBE for his services to tackling discrimination in sport. Well done. He is Vice President of leading anti-racism charity Show Racism the Red Card, and GMB is proud to be a leading sponsor of the vital work Show Racism Red Card do, with young people to tackle racism through education and sport. And before I ask Leroy to talk, we will watch a short video of an example of the great work that Show Racism the Red Card does.
So for a long time, I didn't tell anyone. I just dealt with it. I got upset when things happened, but I didn't actually tell any teachers because I didn't really know how to, and also I didn't want to, tell on people in the class. But eventually I went home one day and I was really upset and I told my mum. And she obviously comforted me and told me there was nothing wrong with me. But I didn't realise then my mum had got in contact with the school, and she had no luck with that. There was no change, and no classes to educate anyone, just nothing at all. So eventually, which I wasn't aware of, my mum started researching and found Show Racism the Red Card, and got in contact with them and asked them if they could come into the school and just to educate the class, really, do a little talk on it. It's crazy, really, because it had a huge impact, bigger than my mum probably would have expected. So the workshop didn't target anyone. It was just a simple class on what racism is and the impacts, which I felt like the class really needed to hear. And after the workshop took place, actually a couple of boys from the class came to the front and actually apologised for some of the racist comments they had made, not realising how upset it made me and one other boy in my class feel. And weirdly enough, one of the girls that used to say racist comments to me quite often, we're really good friends now. So I felt like having that workshop really did make a huge impact and really educated the class on how serious it was. And obviously I got a friendship out of it now that I wouldn't have had. So yeah, I'm really glad that happened. After the workshop, I didn't actually have any more racism. So I feel like that workshop really paid off. Yeah, I felt like me and one of the girls that was a little bit racist to me, we got along a lot better. And yeah, just in general, since that workshop, while I was in that school, I didn't experience any more racism at all. So yeah, it made going to school a lot easier for me. Show Racism the Red Card.
Afternoon conference. Hannah was my fourth workshop 12 years ago. She's grown up quite a lot now. She's from Swansea. Took me a few hours to find it up in the valleys of Swansea, but I found it, and it's one of the proudest things that I've ever done. But I have to tell you how I got here, how I got to this situation. I was brought up in South London. My mum and dad, my four sisters, elder sisters. My dad named us all L's: Lauren, Linda, Lorna, Lena, and I'm Leroy. He said that if you ever got in trouble with the bank manager, it might give you a little bit of time to sort things out before they actually catch up with you. And I had a really good upbringing. You know, my dad's story and my story actually starts before any of us were born. My dad came over in the 50s from Sierra Leone. My mum's from Sierra Leone, but they met in this country. But but this happened even before they met. My dad was in South London in Tooting. He was with some workmates in a pub, and one of his workmates, who was Jamaican, had a white girlfriend, and my dad was sat down with them, and the teddy boy came up to the young lady and said, "What are you doing sitting with them?" And my dad had a habit of going into a posh voice when he's confronted by anything. He said, "Excuse me, young chap, what's your problem?" And the teddy boy smashed him over the head with a glass bottle, and it ruptured his temple, and he was rushed to hospital, and it was like that about whether he would live. Obviously he lived because I'm here. But he went into hospital. It was in the South London press. It was all over the papers. It was a massive story. And while my dad was in hospital, the mother of this teddy boy went to see him in hospital, and they got talking. It went to court, and my dad was stood in the dock. Not in the dock, sorry, he stood in the court. And the judge said to my dad, "Mr. Rosenio, look, I'm going to talk very slowly now so you can understand exactly what is going on. And if anything goes above your head, please let me know, and we'll try to explain it to you in simple terms." Now, my dad always told me to keep your powder dry. Keep your powder dry. So my dad looked at the judge and went, So the session went on, and it got to the end of the session. And the judge said to my dad, "Mr. Rosenio, is there anything you'd like to say?" And my dad got up, and he said, "Well, Judge, actually I was brought up in a grammar school. English is my first language, and I most probably speak the language much better than everybody in this court." He also said, "I struck up a friendship with the mother of the young man, and I'd like to ask for leniency, because I believe that this woman's going to play a big part in this young man's life, and if we show leniency, that he'll have a really good life and something to give to society." And the judge was really impressed. He showed that boy leniency, and my dad and that mum and that family became very good friends. So that taught me a very, very good early lesson. When I was growing up in South London, my 4 sisters, when I had any sort of racism, there used to be programs like Till Death Us Do Part and Love Thy Neighbour, and people wanted to reenact that. But when they reenacted on me, I just tell my older sisters, they go and sort it out. So I didn't have any problem whatsoever. I had a great upbringing. Our neighbours were Polish, were Scottish, were English, and my parents coming over here, we didn't go to pubs. We had parties in the front room. Even in August, we had 2 fireplaces. We still live there now. My mum would put the fire on because she said it was a nice setting. It was absolutely baking in there, by the way. But we had all our neighbours over, and we used to do the car wash dance. Now, don't pretend any of you are not old enough to remember car wash. The car wash dance. We used to do that we used to do that in our front room with all the neighbours, and we had an absolutely wonderful time. So racism didn't touch me while I was growing up because I didn't know what it was. I had a terrific upbringing. Brixton Prison, for where I live, is just about where that stand is. I used to walk through Brixton Prison to get to secondary school every single day. And the simple message, there was no location in those days. You know, this was a good location to be brought up because my dad said, if you ever get into trouble, that's where you'll end up. It's that simple. My problem started when my dream came true when I became a professional footballer at Fulham under Malcolm McDonald and Ray Harford. They were the coaches. I thought my dream had come true. And on my 3rd game, I played at Leeds United. And in those days, there were 10-foot high fences. You remember 10-foot high fences all around the pitches. Unbelievable environment to play football in. And we were losing 1-0, which we did a lot in those days. We were losing 1-0, to be fair. And myself and another player, Paul Parker, who went on to play for Man United. We were only 2 black players on the pitch playing for Fulham. And we went to run for the ball, picked it up, and rushing to take the corner. And I looked up, and the crowd at Ellen Road were 10,000 people doing the Nazi salute towards me and Paul. Zi, ha, zi, ha, zi, ha, zi, ha. And I was 17 years old. And I looked at Paul, and Paul looked at me, and we both wanted the ground to just swallow us up and disappear. I'd never seen as much hatred towards me in my life. I had to make a decision then. Do I want to carry on? Do I want to stop playing? Because that was serious. Do I want to do that? And my dad said to me, never let anybody stop you doing what you want to do. So I carried on playing. A few weeks later at Portsmouth, I was walking off the pitch. A young boy about 10 spat on me, and I assumed that it was his father who was next to him, and everybody in that stand started laughing at me. I went into the dressing room, and a lot of the players were really angry that they'd seen someone spit at me. And they came up to me and said, "You all right?" I said, "Am I all right?" I said, "You didn't do that when 10,000 Leeds United fans were doing the Nazi salute towards me. You didn't do that when people threw bananas at me the other day. You didn't do that when people were doing the monkey chant towards me 3 weeks ago." I said, "Just because someone's done something physical, now you think there's a problem. All those things have exactly the same effect on me as when I was spat at." They got that a little bit, and they started to understand what I was going through. But I had to keep my powder dry. I had a great career. I enjoyed my career, and I loved the game. But I had to keep my powder dry, because if I had said anything, it was my problem. It was my chip on the shoulder. It was me who was the problem, not the abuser. So to have a career in football, I had to keep my powder dry. And so I did. Lots of players didn't, and they disappeared by the wayside because of that. And they were better players than me, by the way. My sisters went to my first game at Queen's Park Rangers on a plastic pitch. Don't remember we played on the plastic pitch. And I must say, I was absolutely atrocious in that game, really, really bad. But I was a striker, and I scored the winning goal, and we won 1-0. So I was on the back pages of the Sun. Isn't that amazing, the back pages of the Sun? Anyway, no, don't clap that. And I went up to the players' lounge feeling like, yeah, I'm arrived, I'm here, I'm arrived. Yeah, I've been practicing my autograph with a little smiley face as I walked in, so I'm signing autographs as I got in. I'm feeling 7 foot tall. And over in the corner of the players' lounge, I can see my sisters and my mum and dad and some of my friends. And Linda, the second oldest sister, came over to me and said, "Leo, we're going to have to go. We'll see you back at home." I said, "Why? You know, it's a big day." She goes, "Oh, no, we'll see you back at home. Don't worry." So I went home. I said, "What was the problem?" They said, "Well, while you were playing, the guy behind us was calling you a black this, a black that, a black this, a black that." And they looked around them, and there were only black faces in the crowd. They'd never felt so intimidated in their lives. So when I went up to the players' lounge, the first person to come up and ask me for my autograph was that guy. And they just couldn't stay there and not say anything. But they had to keep their powder dry. So for the next 12 years, no one came to watch me play a professional game of football, because I couldn't allow it, because I'd be more worried about them than playing on the pitch. I've been busy. I've got 5 kids, and yeah, I've been busy. And I'm quite proud of that. And Liam, who's just retired, he's retired from football, shows how old I am. He finished at Brighton, and he works at Brighton. I'm very, very proud of him. I won't have my kids called mixed race, because when you speak to kids, language is extremely important. And don't let anybody tell you about this political correctness not being important. Political correctness is vastly important, and words are important, especially with children. So I won't have my kids called mixed race, because when you imply race, you imply there's more than one race, and there's only one race. Otherwise, you call someone mixed race, you're implying that one of us is an alien. So I call my kids mixed heritage. And when people are going to schools and kids say, ask them, how many skin colours are there? And the kids, "Oh, there's 2, brown and white." Or, "No, there's 3, there's brown, white, and light brown." I say, "Well, no, how many people are there in the world?" "Well, 6, 7 billion. That's right, there are 6 or 7 billion different skin colours in the world. So when someone's having a go at you because you've got a different colour skin, how stupid are they? And they say, "Yeah, you're right. We've all got different skin colour. What a ridiculous thing." And when kids go to school, I try and get them to understand how it feels when you have to put up with racist abuse. And discrimination is different from racist abuse, and we could go into that. But I try and get them to understand that when they're at school and people call you a name because you're thin, because you're fat, because you've got glasses, you haven't got glasses, because you're short, because you're tall, when you're at school. And then you go home and your parents say to you, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, what a ridiculous saying that is. Because when I was playing football, I broke my collarbone, I broke my ankle, I broke my wrist, I broke most bones on my body. I've had 18 operations in my time as a professional footballer, and I've healed. I've healed to a point. But when I think back to when I was at school, I remember the time when somebody called me a name, and I remember exactly where I was, who said it, how they said it, and how I felt. And I will never forget that. So to ignore people calling you names is allow things to fester and grow and be worse. So please don't ever say that to your kids. Get them to deal with it in a really positive way. When my son went to school, because he's mixed heritage, I came up with a problem. He said, Dad, what gang should I be in? What gang should you be in? What do you mean? I can't go in the white gang. I can't go in the black gang. Oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, good question. I tell you what, why don't you go and make your own gang? And he said, yeah, okay. So he went away. About 7 weeks, 8 weeks later, I went to the school. I was looking in the schoolyard, and Liam got together with his little brother and his gang. And I know this sounds awful, and it isn't politically correct. But all the kids were sort of like the unfortunate kids in the school. Do you know what I mean? Like the ones that looked the most unfortunate ones. He got them all together in a gang, and they were his gang. I couldn't be more proud. When I was playing, there weren't many role models. There's one role model for me called Justin Fashioning. Does anybody remember Justin Fashioning? Yeah, Justin. And I remember the goal he scored on Match of the Day, and it was iconic, and it's lived in my mind since that moment. And when I was at West Ham, Justin came on loan towards the end of his career. And Justin was 6'4". Everybody was black, and he was gay. And everybody knew he was gay. And by the way, if I was gay, I would as well, because he was amazing. Amazing. 6 foot tall, muscles everywhere. Yeah, no problem. Me and him, no problem. But Justin walked in after training, no clothes on. In those days, we had great big baths. There's no health and safety. It was pretty disgusting, but we had great big baths. And I was sat in the bath with two guys who I would have called friends at the time. And Justin got in the bath, and the two guys got up and walked out. And I knew exactly why they'd got up and why they'd walked out. Now, Justin and I didn't become great friends. He was there for 3 or 4 weeks. He seemed like a nice guy, and then he disappeared, because that's what happens in football. People come and people go. The next time I saw Justin, I was sat at home in South London, and he was on the news, and Justin had hung himself in the Elephant and Castle, which is just down the road from me, and he committed suicide. And I thought back to that exact moment when Justin walked into that dressing room. And I realised then I didn't have the education or the knowledge or the nous to deal with that situation in a positive way. And I needed to, and I regretted that. I could have said to those two guys, look, he doesn't fancy you, you're ugly. He doesn't fancy you. There were sort of guys who might have taken that, might have broken the ice. I don't know. I'll never know. But from that moment on, I vowed that I would be educated and have the knowledge to make sure that every time something happened, I'd be able to deal with it at that moment in time. Because when you don't deal with these things at the time, they lose their power and you lose an opportunity. And every single one of you in this audience has been in a situation where you felt powerless because you haven't had the knowledge or the power or the education to deal with a certain situation. Every single one of you. And you need to get that power and that knowledge and that education, because we can make a change, we can make a difference, all in our own little world, we can make a change. And it adds up to being so powerful. I did a speech at Hope Not Hate, and there's an old couple sat in front, and I told them that Justin Fashion's story. They went off. I saw them about 6 months later, and they came up to me and said, Leroy, do you remember us? We were in London when you did that speech? It was on a Saturday. I said, yeah. They said, well, we got on the train on the way home, and there were some football fans singing racist, homophobic songs on the train. Yeah? What did you do? They're about 70 or 80, by the way. Well, we got up and challenged them. Well, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. Why did you do that? I said, oh, don't worry. It was fine. They stopped, and we became good friends. You have to do it, and you have to do it at the right times. The work that Show Race and the Red Card do is incredible. And when I played football as a manager, you know, we played the game, we win on a Saturday. By Monday, you forget whether you won, lost, or drew. It was chip paper. You forget about it, you move on. The work we do stays within that school. I go back to schools and I see it's embedded within that school. It's so important. And it ends up with stories like Hannah on a regular basis. It's the most important work I've ever done in my life, and I am very proud to represent Show Race and the Red Card when we do it. I think we've seen that we had Wear Red Day, which is on the 18th of October this year. It's on the 4th of October in Scotland. I think 60,000 people took part in it last year and raised over £60,000. So if you could do that again, that would be great. But there are great things going on all around the country, around Show Race and the Red Card. But I just go back to my dad. He passed away 10 years ago. And unfortunately, he passed away just before Barack Obama became the President of the United States of America, because he would never, ever have believed that that would happen in his lifetime. And I hear a lot of academics who use the word race all the time, who use that, well, racism will never change because racism's been around for years, since the Roman times. There used to be black, you know, there used to be black people who had slaves back in Roman times. We'll never get rid of it. Absolute nonsense. Our kids get it. Our kids will change it. And I aim to change it within my lifetime for my kids' sake and for my grandkids' sake. It's amazing to be in Brighton talking to you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honour, absolute honour. I've seen the great work you do all around the country. I live in Bristol, Wales and South West. I know that area well, so I saw that work done there. My partner comes from North Devon, so Appledore. I know Appledore well. I know all those areas well, and I'm a London boy. But I've been all around. I've been all around this country, and I've met so many people. And I'll finish with this story. I tell the story about why I like to be called black. And people say, oh, why do you like to be called black? And I said, because it's a real positive way to describe me. And many years ago, an old lady said, you know what? I don't like calling you black. Why don't you like calling me black? She said, because when I was growing up, you had Black Monday, you had black this, you had black. It was all negative. Everything black was negative. And she said, I don't feel comfortable. And I said to her, well, you know Rosa Parks, you know the colour of the bus and the little story, told a little story. And she goes, I know that story. She said, oh, I get it now. The problem we have with racism is that sometimes we want to label people as being racist for doing something which is ignorant. And you have an opportunity. I told you about that moment of power when you can change people around. That is the moment when they do something which is ignorant and stupid, and you have to recognize that. You have to recognize the positives in people. Because if you label someone racist, there's a good chance, by the way, they're going to turn out racist. But if you can turn them around with education and with knowledge, there's a good chance you can turn them around. Now, if that lady hadn't spoken to me, I know a lot of black guys who would have said they would have walked away from her and ignored her. And that would have reinforced her feelings about black people. We have got to be bigger and better in the way we behave to change this through education and through knowledge. That's what Show Race and the Red Card do. so pleased that the GMB have got on board, and in partnership with Show Racing and Red Card, we're going to change the world. Thank you. Thanks very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Leroy. What an inspirational speech that was. Thank you, and for all the work you do. We've got these cards on your table. Can you all stand up, turn around, hold them up to the balcony, and we'll have a photo shoot, please. That concludes Congress for this morning. Thank you. Thank you for coming early. You've just got time to get to the fringe events. We've gone over a bit, but that was worth, that last bit. See you back this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Thank you.